She went under the wheels.
How affected.
Welcome to Under the Wheels. I'm Matthew.
I'm Gabe.
And in today's episode, we're going back to talking about modern movies again, aren't we?
I know, it's a movie that actually came out this year.
Yeah, quote, came out, unquote, as much as
on
a
Netflix.
movie. Yeah, as much as a movie like that can come out. Yeah, we're talking about the new release, The Old Guard, which I guess isn't that new because it's been out for like a month and a half or something like that.
You know, I've already probably forgotten that it was a thing, so
Yeah.
this will help rekindle interest. They've already moved on to whatever new thing Netflix is putting on their banner.
They're trying to revive Jamie Foxx's career. And
Yeah.
and Joseph Gordon-Levitt's as well, I guess, because I feel like his career's like gone completely. Like you barely hear
Isn't
about him.
that Umbrella something or other show the big thing now? Umbrella
The new
School?
season?
Umbrella Academy?
I guess so. Well, and they have like a gaming documentary called like High Score coming out that like I don't know how I feel about that because they're like, oh, this is the best gaming documentary, and I'm like, I don't know, man. If they don't talk about speed runs, how good can it be? So that's my bar.
I don't think wait, is it a documentary just on gaming in general or specifically arcade gaming?
I honestly have no idea. It just started appearing. Like most things with Netflix, it just kind of appears, and then like it's like, okay, well, I can either do research or watch it, or Netflix can go fuck himself. So
I mean, most Netflix content falls into that third category.
I know, especially recently. I mean,
Always.
To their credit, they've been doing a good job of like mixing it up as far as like, okay, well, there's they're trying to get action movies out there that are fucking expensive. They're doing these documentary series which are not expensive at all. They're doing these television series which are expensive in like the short run, but they don't pay anyone shit. So it's like, not that expensive. And it's like, okay, well, like I kind of give it up to them for having a diverse portfolio, but ever since they've lost the Disney license, I feel like they've gotten better other movies. I don't know if you've noticed that.
Not really. I mean, there's not a whole lot of Netflix originals that I was really like super into in terms of like TV anyway. I mean,
Right.
the only one I watched with any sort of regularity was probably Daredevil, which is under the Disney license.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, I like their like limited series sometimes that they have, like Maniac.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, anytime they give Cary Fukunaga money, it works out really well. But other than that, it's kind of a crapshoot.
The content they've licensed, I feel like, has gotten a lot better. Like, they've gotten a lot more Scorsese films. They've gotten a lot more, like, I can't even say.
Yeah. It used to be, like, you couldn't find any movies that weren't from the past, like, 15 years. And now you're getting a little bit more diversity in terms of older stuff. So
yeah, and they seem to have Tarantino's, like, they have a license on, like, Tarantino's stuff, too. So you can watch, like, most of his movies now, too, which is kind of...
Well, so one of the movies I watched on Netflix recently.
Ooh, yeah. What have you been watching?
Is 1980 or 1981's Nighthawks, starring Sylvester Stallone, Lando Calrissian, and Rutger Hauer in what was his first English language appearance. 1981. And it's whatever. Like, it's fine. Rutger Hauer is amazing, as always.
Yeah, as always.
He just completely steals the show anytime he's on screen. It's weird because Rutger Hauer is like this international terrorist, kind of in the vein of Carlos the Jackal.
In the movie?
And no, Carlos the Jackal is a real life international terrorist.
But Rutger Hauer in the movie. Because, like, I mean,
in the movie,
Rutger Hauer
yeah.
being an international terrorist, I can easily see. But I just, just to confirm, in the movie he is.
Yes, not in real life. In real life, he's an actor.
Well, in real life,
Matthew.
He's dead. Yeah.
In real life, he's a dead actor. But yeah, so he's like this. He plays this international terrorist, kind of in the vein of Carlos the Jackal, at a time when like there wasn't really much that was understood about international terrorism. So it feels kind of strange because it's like the Palestinian plane hijacking view of international terrorism, and kind of not what we have right now. And then Sylvester Stallone and Billy D. Williams are two loose cannon cops who don't play by the rules, who are then recruited into this like NYPD anti-terror unit because Interpol thinks correctly that Rutger Hauer is targeting New York City. Also, Lindsay Wagner, the lady who delivers the worst performance in Death Stranding, plays Sylvester Stallone's girlfriend in this. Which I didn't realize until I looked it up.
Was she awful in it, or was she like serviceable?
She's fine. She's barely in the movie. So the highlights, like there's a great foot chase through the New York subway system, which the movie had a lot of behind the scenes trouble where like I think the original director got fired like a week into shooting. So then while they were getting a new one in, Sylvester Stallone took over. And then there was like a lot of post-production shenanigans where it's like the new director and Sylvester Stallone were both like fighting over the final edit. But apparently that foot chase sequence was a Stallone directed sequence, and it's really good, to his credit. Against his credit, though, he has some of the worst line delivery I've ever seen. Because there's a interesting sequence where Rutger Hauer, there's a UN meeting going on in New York. There's a suspension cable car that travels between various parts of New York City, and there's a moment where the cable car has a bunch of UN people and their spouses on it, and that's when Rutger Hauer strikes and takes them all hostage. So he's in this cable car suspended over the New York Bay, and Sylvester Stallone is in a helicopter kind of staring him down. Yeah. And Rutger Hauer's talking to the cops over the radio, like listing his demands, and then he kills a hostage just to show he's serious. But like when he kills this lady and throws her out of the cable car, and Sylvester Stallone says with like the most stoic deadpan expression, not changing whatsoever, "Oh God, he killed her." And it's just like, what? That's all you can like muster for that? Like, "Oh God, he killed her."
Oh my God.
The other thing that is like weird and noteworthy is that the movie begins and ends with Sylvester Stallone in a dress, getting the better of someone by dressing up as a woman.
What?
Yeah. The movie is way too overly reliant on Sylvester Stallone in a dress.
Really?
Yeah. It's so bad.
I mean, did he at least look good?
No, like you can tell it's Sylvester Stallone.
Is this after First Blood? Or is it after Rocky 2? It's probably after Rocky 2, right? Why would you have Sylvester Stallone dressed in drag? It just seems...
I don't know.
It's like
understand. They establish it at the beginning of the movie. Like, that's his thing. It's right after Rocky 2, a little bit before First Blood. But, like, that's his thing to, like, trick criminals, is he dresses up as a woman so that they like approach him, and then he like beats the shit out of them or whatever.
Because he's just so freaking. Because he's so feminine.
Like, it's so weird because like you see it at the beginning, and then the ending sequence starts, and you're like, I really hope that lady is not Sylvester Stallone in drag, and then it is, and you're like, this movie sucks. But like in between, there's some like cool stuff, and there's a lot of schlock. So yeah, but that's on Netflix, or at least it was. I don't know.
Is it okay? I may have to check it out. I may have to.
Oh, and the score is terrible.
Oh my God!
It's like I don't know. Music is by Keith Emerson, who is a English. Oh, he's one of these like early pioneers of synthesizers, and he's the he's one of the dudes from Emerson, Lake and Palmer. Okay, that makes sense. But it's so bad. It's like this awful like fake like synthesizer orchestra, but like not like modern synthesizer orchestra where it's at least passable. This is like 1981 synthesizer orchestra where it's like your synthetic violins just sound like a synthesizer. But then he tries to do like these like funky like disco rhythms and stuff throughout the movie that clash with everything.
Oh God. Well, okay, but what do you give it? What do you give the movie?
It's like a high, it's fine.
Yeah. Is it like super campy? at least?
No. Well, it's weird because it's like it's ultra gritty, like 1970s gritty. Mm-hmm. But there are moments that are so campy that you can't take it seriously.
Oh my god. This
So
might
yeah, again, it's a really weird mix because like it's got this like dark, gritty style. It feels like one of those grimy 70s cop movies, you know? And like that's really cool. There's some sequences in it that are really cool. Rutger Hauer's really cool.
Yeah.
But and then there's a whole bunch of other crap like the soundtrack and Sylvester Stallone's performance, Stallone in drag.
Well, like you kind of had me at like Sylvester Stallone, I can take or leave, but like Billy D. Williams, I like Billy D. Williams. Rutger Hauer, I like Rutger Hauer. Like this, you know.
I like Billy D. Williams too. He's just barely in the movie.
Oh, really? I feel like that's Billy D. Williams in most movies. Mm-hmm. He's like, what's the bare minimum percentage of minutes I need to be on screen to make sure I get my paycheck? Okay.
Yeah, it's like for a guy
that.
who's supposed to be Stallone's partner, he's not in the movie a whole lot.
I wonder, because I know Edward Norton, like, he usually goes in and he's like, no, I need to be in the movie more. I wonder if Stallone was like, oh, we got to take out Billy D because I'm not in the movie enough. You know, like, he was like, he's taking Billy D's lines and Billy D's like, well, I got those Colt 45 commercials, so I'm good. But that's so strange. It's like Rutger Hauer, at least in the, okay.
He's in the movie a lot.
Is he?
Like,
okay.
Whoever was editing it knew that Rutger Hauer was amazing and tried to put him in as much as possible.
I hear Rutger Hauer's really hard to work with.
I don't know.
Like, he never says the same line twice. He always, like, you never know exactly what you're getting with him. And so, like, you kind of roll the camera and hope for the best.
Okay, so so like I said, the new director, the replacement director, and Stallone fought a lot over the edit.
Yeah.
Because they both directed decent chunks of the movie.
Oh.
So they both, like, had a right to be in that room, you know? So there's two versions of Nighthawk shown to test audiences, one emphasizing Stallone's character and the other emphasizing Rutger Hauer's character. The version basically starring Rutger Hauer was better received by audiences. But Stallone removed some of Hauer's scenes from the final version.
They're like, you know what? We really can't be sympathetic towards this international terrorist.
I know.
And I want more credit.
Well, and the other thing is, I think Stallone later said in an interview that he regretted, like, the amount of Rutger Hauer's performance that was cut from the movie.
Really? Because
yeah. He
I
said, like, Nighthawks would have been better if he was in it more.
If this interview took place, like, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, I wonder if he's like, "Ugh, my ego got in the way of making this great thing."
This is an interview from, like, 2008, so more than 10 years ago.
Yeah. Okay, I feel like prior to Creed 2, Stallone had finally been able to kind of set aside his own ego towards projects. Like, maybe I'm, like, I had a great run, let me look back and reflect, and like, oh, maybe I was an asshole for trying to, like, be the big thing or whatever. So I wonder if it's, like, in reflection. Or, like, Rutger Hauer went to his house and, like, threatened him. He's like, you better fucking say this. I don't know. Like, Rutger Hauer seemed like one of the most interesting people to meet. Because, like, I've never seen an interview with him. I've just heard secondhand accounts of how, like, the line in Batman Begins where he's like, "Didn't you get the memo?" Like, that was improvised. And guess what? It was so good they brought it back for the end of the movie. Like he was, he's... I've heard he's kind of a wild card, but like he almost always made whatever he was in a little bit better.
Well, it's interesting. So there's some neat set stories from Nighthawks because apparently Hauer and Stallone, like, fought with each other a lot, and he Hauer was injured twice during various action sequences, one of which was one that Stallone was directing. So he was angry about that.
I can see that.
But even in a 1993 interview, though, like, Stallone even then was like, Hauer held the movie together.
God, man. Fucking Rutger Hauer. Like, pour some out for him, man. He's a freaking legend.
He's one of the best of all time.
He is. I feel like he never really got his the props he deserved. As much
No,
credit
I
and
don't
plaudits
think
as
so.
he got, and as much popular appeal that he got, I feel like he still never got what he really deserved.
No, definitely not.
Quick aside, before we get into what else you've been watching, we do have some quote listener unquote Q&A at the very end. So, per usual, under the wheels transitions, making the announcement now just so that we don't forget.
Yeah, we will be answering a couple listener questions at the end, so stay tuned.
Or trying
for that.
to, yeah.
We'll try to.
What else were you watching this week?
The other
Or
movie
this
I saw during this
Month.
intervening period was Julie Taymor's Frida,
Okay.
about the life of Frida Kahlo and her single eyebrow, which is actually really good. It's interesting because, Julie Taymor has this very visually, showy style of directing. And there's a lot of bits of the movie where it's like something will happen in Frida's life, and then all the actors will be arranged with heavy makeup to imitate one of Frida's real life paintings, which will then dissolve into a scene.
Right.
And things like that. And the first time a scene ends with a painting shot, it's really jarring.
Mm-hmm.
But then the rest of the movie, it actually works really well. It's also, it's really good. All the acting's really good. It's very stylish. I wish the movie didn't focus so much on Alfred Molina's portrayal of Diego Rivera, because it's I thought this movie was called Frida, not Diego. I know that they were really, important in each other's lives, but it's, I feel like she's got more going on than the movie even lets on.
Well, especially
But,
Salma Hayek was a producer on that too, so it's kind of weird. Why isn't it
is weird.
focusing more on me?
Yeah. It's another star-studded cast. There's a lot of people who have just little cameos, and you're like, wow, you're way too big for that small of a cameo. Antonio Banderas is a 30-second cameo in the movie, and it's just oh, hey, look, it's Antonio Banderas.
How much money do we have in the budget? It's a $20 million movie. We can pay him $1,000. We get him for 30 seconds.
Yeah, Edward Norton has a 2-minute cameo.
Oh, I think because he was dating Salma Hayek at the time.
Oh, maybe. Yeah, he plays John Rockefeller Jr.
Oh, he doesn't put on a Spanish accent? Because that's
No,
what I
he
want to see.
doesn't. He does a good job. There's a lot of weird fake accents throughout the movie, though. Salma Hayek is Mexican, so her accent is flawless. Diego Luna's in it, so his accent is, his accent.
Yeah.
Alfred Molina, even though he's British, can put on a very good Mexican accent.
Right.
But then you've got whoever plays Frida Kahlo's sister in that movie is very clearly not Mexican and has a awful Mexican accent, to the point that every time she talks, you just kind of go, what? But the worst of all is frickin' Jeffrey Rush plays Leon Trotsky
Oh, no.
in the movie, and his accent is so bad. His Russian accent is it's like a Martian accent. It is truly horrendous, and every scene he's in, it's just so distracting. And then there's this whole thing running through the movie where Diego Rivera cheats on Frida so constantly that she eventually says fuck it and just starts screwing everybody.
Nice.
So then there's a scene with her and freaking Jeffrey Rush in old man makeup.
Oh!
It's so weird. And it comes out of nowhere too.
Some people I never want to see have a sex scene. Let's see. Gerard Depardieu is probably one. Jeffrey Rush is way up there.
Yeah.
To be honest, so was Alfred Molina. No. What the fuck?
I mean, the thing is, as funky looking as Alfred Molina is, he is so much better looking than Diego Rivera. like, you know, people might watch this movie and, oh, there's no way like Selma Hayek would go out with Alfred Molina, but you're like, oh no, you have no idea. Like, you have no idea what actual Diego Rivera looks like.
Yeah, but
Alfred Molina's a stud next to the real Diego Rivera.
But like, Salma Hayek as Frida Kahlo is like that's like, you know, there's quite a lot of gloss that they have to pour into that machine, even with like the unibrow makeup and everything. Like, you still, you know,
even with an eyebrow and a mustache, it's still Selma Hayek.
An eyebrow, a mustache, and like way too much forehead. You're still like, the bone structure of Salma Hayek works. But like, yeah, I'm looking at a picture of Diego Rivera right now, and he kind of looks like a depressed Orson Welles when he got fat. And even then, that's probably yeah. I'm trying to think. He looks like an actor I've seen.
He looks like a sad frog.
They should have gotten Vincent D'Onofrio to play him. That guy, dude, D'Onofrio.
Can you imagine Vincent D'Onofrio with a Mexican accent?
Man, I feel like I don't need to. I feel like there's something out there where he does that, but yeah.
What if he just talks like his usual grumbly self? Frida, I'm a great admirer of your paintings.
Well, what's weird. I love your unibrow. What's weird is like Vincent D'Onofrio, in general, isn't like the gravelly Kingpin voice, like, or like even when he's in what's it called, Men in Black. I'm used to Vincent D'Onofrio like talking at a regular rate, whereas his voice is a little too high pitched for that like big body of his.
No, man, like every Vincent D'Onofrio role that sticks out in my memory, he talks like Kingpin. He talks like Kingpin in Men in Black. He talks like Kingpin in Daredevil because he's Kingpin.
Right, because he's
Kingpin.
Kingpin.
Talks like Kingpin in Dishonored 2.
What about Full Metal Jacket? He doesn't talk like Kingpin in Full Metal Jacket.
I don't remember what he sounds like in Full Metal Jacket. But that's also earlier in his career before he was like...
Well, I mean, I used to watch a lot of Law & Order Criminal Intent. Well, not a lot. Because the show got progressively worse as it went. But I watched an amount of Law & Order Criminal Intent, and he wasn't like super mumblecore and grumbly then. Like, and think about your favorite movie, Jurassic World. He wasn't grumbling in that one. He was.
I don't remember his.
I know you're trying to forget. I know
you
actively try to forget he's in it.
Like every Jurassic World scene in the control room, I don't remember because I've actively suppressed it.
He's not in the control room though. But anyway, suffice it to say,
every scene that's indoors, I don't remember.
How about every scene that's in Jurassic World, you actively try to forget? Like, let's just. There's the hands up, and that's about it. And that's only because it's memed. But yeah, Frida, did Julie Taymor's style work against her in this, or do you think she was able to kind of suppress it?
Her style worked, I think, against her at first, but then it works for the movie going forward. I think the only other issue with it is it's like it covers Frida's entire life in 2 hours.
Yeah.
So it has that feeling of like this is moving a little too fast,
Oh,
like
interesting.
It's like life event happens, on to the next thing. Life event happens, on to the next, and which is not necessarily an issue with this movie in particular, so much as it is an issue with a lot of biopics. Like the best biopics typically are either like Malcolm X, where it's just a million years long, so that you can actually get to everything, or it just focuses on like a specific time period in a person's life.
Yeah. Do you have a preference?
Or it's more like if it does jump around, it's jumping around more based on theme and less on chronology.
Do you have a preference when you're watching a biopic or a biopic or however it's pronounced?
No one says biopic.
You haven't heard it pronounced biopic?
No, biopic sounds like an eye issue.
That'd be bioptics, but yes.
But it's like it's a biographical picture, so it's a biopic.
Yeah, I would think it would be biopic, but I think like on A&E back in the day, they were like, "Watch our new biopic," and like I hadn't even thought about that for about 18 years, and then
we
someone
have
was
higher
like,
standards than network television. Okay?
But
they don't have to pronounce things correctly, but we do.
someone that was like that was close to as pretentious as I was like, isn't it pronounced biopic? And I was like, fuck, dude, my mind's been blown. Now I need to know. It's not.
It's like, God, man.
It's a biopic. The words don't
Well, it's
flow.
it's like GIF. GIF is a graphics interchange format. So GIF. But everyone's like, there's people who say GIF, and it's like, it's not peanut butter.
That's exactly what I was gonna say. I was like, no, it's not the peanut butter.
Also, Frida was shot by Rodrigo Prieto, so that explains partly why it looks really good.
Julie Taymor actually has a history of really good cinematographers on her movies, because I know Across the Universe was shot by Bruno De Bono, which is like a favorite DP of mine.
He's one of your favorites, yeah.
Yeah. But that's interesting about Rodrigo Prieto. But you never answered my question about which do you prefer? Do you prefer the all-encompassing biopic or the...
Either or, just as long as it's good.
Oh, okay. All right. I got tired of the whole, like, oh, we're going to focus on this one event that covers their entire life. Like, The Aviator, I don't love. And I feel like they were like, oh, we wanted to focus on just a time period because his life is so amazing and there's so much we could cover. We're only going to focus on this one thing. And for some reason, that was the straw.
The one type of biopic that I really don't like is the one that tries to do both and doesn't succeed at either one. Because there are some biopics out there, I can't think of one right off the top of my head, that will do it'll do what you're saying, like the specific time period in a person's life.
Yeah.
And then tack on an extra 15 minutes at the end to get through like a bunch of obligatory ending stuff about how they died or whatever.
Well, let me put it...
Like take Lincoln, for example.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Yeah.
Like, imagine if Lincoln is... I don't love that movie because I thought it was kind of boring. But structurally, I have no complaints about it. It focuses on this very specific event and Abraham Lincoln's role in it. But imagine if Lincoln had an extra 15 minutes where he goes to the theater and there's this really intense, psycho-esque scene where he gets assassinated, and then another 5 minutes where they eulogize him and talk about how great Abraham Lincoln was, and it's just like that is awful. I hate that. If you're gonna either do the person's entire life or do the limited view, but don't do both. Don't do the limited view and then at the very end try to account for everything else that the person ever did.
Well, here's a spin on it with first off, Lincoln kind of got to serve his cake and eat it too. Spielberg got the best of everything because he got the Gettysburg Address in, and he got it in a way that was not conventional because he had the white soldiers and then the black soldiers saying it. So it's like, oh, that's a creative way of doing it. So he's like, oh, I got to, check off the creative thing. But then at the end, he still got, spoilers, Lincoln's death, and he still got to have footage of, Daniel Day-Lewis, raising fire and brimstone as he's giving the Gettysburg Address. So, Spielberg covered it all. But, how do you feel about, with Steve Jobs, where it focuses on 3 events, but it flashes back? It has, these slice flashbacks in them.
Steve Jobs is good. That structurally is very sound because it's 3 very specific events but that have a lot of context.
Right.
And you can use that context to give other information about the character.
Yeah. I think that's why I like it so much and why I never want to watch Jobs with Ashton Kutcher. Even though that would normally be how I prefer a biopic, is I like the linear when I was born and when I died. But yeah, I agree that Steve Jobs is an outlier, but it still kind of does that thing where it's it just does it in a more creative way where it takes all of the events of the life and kind of works it in a little bit better. It kind of kneads the dough better.
Well, I think regardless of what your structural approach is to doing a biopic, I think it's important to think about, what is the story you're trying to tell? Because at the end of the day, the story shouldn't be so-and-so was a person and they did these things. That's not a good story. It has to be something more than that.
Especially at this day and age, yeah.
Yeah, well, because it's you can look up a Wikipedia summary if you just want information about a person.
Yeah.
But you want a narrative about the person, it has to be more than just, a list of accomplishments or a list of events.
Or else you get freaking Bohemian Rhapsody.
Yeah. Well, a lot of the crappy biopics of today suffer from that, where it's just and then he did this, and then he did this, and then he did that, and then he did this.
Or
Where it's
yeah.
like Harry, like that Harriet, Rising is technically a biopic of Harriet Tubman, but it's framed as like some action movie. So like that's neat. Even though it sounds kind of stupid, like
Actually,
it's neat, and it's doing it has the right
It's got the right idea.
it's got the right intentions.
Yes, because it doesn't have the
know?
right idea. Although, I did say if I wanted to see a Harriet Tubman movie, I basically want it to be like Harriet Tubman gunning down a bunch of slave owners in like a ridiculous, not necessarily fully historically accurate way. Like, I don't mind them playing fast and loose, because if you're gonna say, "Oh, it's not a documentary," we wanted to take creative license. It's like, fuck
Just
it,
do
take as
the
much
Harriet
as you can.
Unchained.
Yeah. Harriet Reloaded, Harriet : slave owner, hunter, killer. Slave owner in quotes, because you don't want that idea to be, a full one, but yeah. As she's like singing she's singing like slave shanties as she's killing slave owners.
She's singing like "Swing Low, Sweet Chariot" as she's like blowing shit up.
It's like they're like, we
They have
really
like some
the
Fast and
baptism
Furious
scene.
style. They have
We
like
like
a
the
Fast and
baptism
Furious
scene
style
in
car chase.
Go ahead.
Oh wait, what? Oh, I was saying they have a Fast and Furious style car chase, but with like horse-drawn carriages.
Yeah, or like they're like, oh yeah, the Underground Railroad, and it's like an actual railroad chase underground.
Oh, they fight on top of a train like Uncharted 2.
Just like a linear action scene of Harriet like shooting bad guys, grabbing their guns, shooting more bad guys. You know who wants to see that shit? I want to see that shit.
I know, that sounds insane.
I know it sounds like what they were doing with like Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, but like it
Yeah.
would work better because you
Well, but
incorporate
Abraham
like the Black
Lincoln
Panther
Vampire
stuff.
Hunter is deathly serious.
Oh no.
No, it's like a straight up like serious movie.
I heard it was so bad.
I know, that's what I've heard too.
Which is weird 'cause-
Like, if you want a silly alternative, there's Franklin Delano Roosevelt Nazi Werewolf Hunter, which is a real movie.
Oh god. But see, that's like, I could get behind that. But again, like, I'm okay with
FDR American Badass.
It's like they had to use the polio thing because like a werewolf had shredded his legs. And so they're like, oh, we'll use the polio thing and we'll put a mechanical contraption behind his legs so he can stand up occasionally.
No,
when he
you need to
needs
see the movie poster for this because his wheelchair has machine guns on
What's
it.
it called?
FDR American Badass.
I thought you were making the name up. What is this? Barry Bostwick is starring in it? What? That's like perfect casting. Oh my god. But it looks really bad.
Oh, it looks terrible.
Oh no. I think the only other... No, Barry Bostwick is pretty much perfect casting, I think. Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. Holy shit. Oh god. It's only 93 minutes.
Yeah. Nice thing about it is... Nice thing about most terrible movies, they're short.
They're short.
They're short because they have no budget.
They have no money. You could literally
It's like,
see
we
the
gotta
money.
push it to 85 minutes and we're good.
Oh my god. Apparently the screenshot of the trailer on IMDb is just Barry Bostwick lighting a cigarette. I'm like,
Yeah.
I could probably get
Like,
behind
the poster's amazing because it's FDR in the Oval Office. He's got like this steampunk wheelchair with machine guns. And then he's got a Tommy gun and he's chomping on this crazy cigarette.
Oh man. God. It's like Wild
So what have you
Wild
been
West.
watching lately?
I took actually it's actually thematically connected to our movie. Or not thematically connected. There's a connection to our movie. I wanted to watch If Beale Street Could Talk.
Oh, nice.
And I did. Yeah.
What'd you
and
think?
it's amazing.
It is amazing.
It's I think it's even more insulting, that Green Book one, when If Beale Street Could Talk was that year. I believe it was
Yep.
that same year.
Yep, it was.
It's also surprising how relevant it all is, even though If Beale Street Could Talk came out like 2 or 3 years ago, to like the whole Black Lives Matter stuff, the police, all that stuff. Like it's really incredible how relevant it all still is, even though the novel came out in the 70s, I'm guessing, maybe the 80s.
Probably the 60s or the 70s. I mean, James Baldwin is old. I mean, he's dead, but
Yeah, I was gonna say, is he still alive? He's the Rutger Hauer of authors.
yeah, I
But-
mean, he died a very long time ago. But yeah, I mean, it's a great movie.
And again, Barry Jenkins, who was a mumblecore director, which I find the most interesting.
Yes, he was.
But Barry Jenkins, I haven't read the book, so I don't know if the narrative jumps around the way that it does in the movie. Mm-hmm. But the way that Barry Jenkins, like almost all of the scenes in the past, if they have dialogue, there's still music playing over them. All the scenes in the present usually don't have a musical accompaniment with them.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was like that was a great way of kind of telling you where you are in the story. Barry Jenkins' use of music in general is just really good. Like, I don't think there are many people who do it the way he does it. And I mean, there's probably a bunch of people, right? Mm-hmm. But like his use of violin score and montage, because when I started rewatching Moonlight, I realized that there were all of these scenes where no talking is happening, and it's just the musics. Who am I? The music and the imagery telling you the emotion of the moment and kind of getting you into the scene.
Yeah.
And Regina Hall, of course, you know, she won the Academy Award that year, and she's freaking awesome. And like, or Regina King. Regina King?
Yeah, Regina King.
Yeah, oh my God, I feel horrible because Regina Hall is not as good an actress as Regina King. But Regina King is great in that. I didn't realize she was playing a mom in that. Somewhere, I guess she's always just kind of played mom roles, but she's always kind of like aged with that, because I think she was playing a mom or a mom-to-be in Jerry Maguire, if you remember her in that at all. But
No, I never saw Jerry Maguire.
oh, it's good. I like it. Tom Cruise runs in it.
Of course he does. He runs in everything.
Yeah, he runs in everything. Like, all of the imagery is really great. All of the actors are really good. And the movie it works so well by playing with subtlety, to me. Mm-hmm. Because they never explicitly state the time period you're in. You just have to use context clues to figure it out. You can get a sense of the character's evolution as the movie goes. I'm specifically thinking about the boyfriend / husband when he's in jail, and how you can tell that he is changing while being inside jail, and he's no longer who she knew or who he was meant to be. And the really depressing ending, which is like, well, we pled out. I don't know. It's just like, it's amazing. It's fantastic. And it was your recommendation. So
Yeah.
Really liked If Beale Street Could Talk. So now that I yield the floor for any comments you have about the movie.
I don't have any new comments. It's a great movie. Barry Jenkins is such a good director.
He is.
And I wasn't a huge fan of Moonlight, but I thought Barry Jenkins did a really good job with what he had. I just kind of thought the story was boring.
Yeah.
But I think what's really fascinating about Beale Street is that, like, not a whole lot happens in the movie.
Yeah.
But everything feels like incredibly urgent, and it feels like there's a ton of things happening.
Yeah.
Which takes a lot of skill. And also, I always like to call attention to Dave Franco's cameo, because I find him incredibly irritating, and then in this, it's like, oh, he's really good.
Yeah, he's awesome in this. I forgot about it for a second, and then when he showed up, I was like, oh yeah, Dave Franco's in this. And what's his name? I can't think of it. Your boy, though, the guy, he was in Joker as the insane asylum check-in guy.
Oh, not Wendell Pierce. Yeah, he has one of the best scenes in the movie.
Yeah, and he's also in Widows, right? He's one of the guy. He's the guy running for Congress in Widows, right? Is it the same guy?
I don't know. Hold on, God, I feel so bad for forgetting his name.
I know, me too, because he's so good in everything he does. I forgot Pedro Pascal was in it too. He's like Brian Tyree Henry.
Brian Tyree Henry, that's him.
Yeah, he's awesome.
I know. Yeah, he's not. I don't think he's in. Oh no, he is in Widows. Never mind. Yeah.
Yeah,
I forgot.
He's awesome in Widows. Like, he's super intimidating, but also like relatable, which is a tough rope to walk, as we will talk about in a second, I'm sure.
But yeah, he's awesome in If Beale Street Could Talk.
Yeah, he's really good. In his one scene where he basically
that's
just
the thing.
steals the show.
He only ever has like one scene in any movie, but it's always great.
I know, that's why Widows is a nice outlier, because he's like, oh, he's in it a lot. This is nice.
Yeah.
God, dude, that year alone for him though, like if you look at 2018, like Widows, If Beale Street Could Talk, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, like Hotel Artemis, I guess. Shit. Like, good for him, man. Mm-hmm. Good for him. And then in Joker, he appears in Joker looking like, what the fuck?
I know.
What else did I watch? I rewatched Seven Samurai, which
of course.
I'm sure we'll talk about that at a later date.
Because you just got Ghost of Tsushima, so you have to watch Seven Samurai.
Actually, I watched Seven Samurai before Ghost of Tsushima was released because my fiance's brother had never seen it and he wanted to watch it, and I was like, sure,
okay.
I can, I'm always down to watch Seven Samurai. So it actually had nothing to do with Ghost of Tsushima, but it made some of the praised talking points about Ghost of Tsushima stand in stark contrast to what they were what they were going for seemed to be in sharp contrast for what the actual intent should have been. Kurosawa mode. But that's neither here nor there. The other movie that I can recollect watching recently was Rounders.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Have you seen Rounders?
No, I just know that John Malkovich has a Russian accent, and it's not a good one.
I mean, it's so bad it's good. Like it's an iconic Russian accent.
Dang. Okay, you might have to watch Frida and tell me whose is like worse, his or Jeffrey Rush.
I mean, Jeffrey Rush has an Israeli accent in Munich, so
that sounds like unimaginably bad.
He's actually really good in Munich. He's really good in it. That's the thing. Jeffrey Rush generally is really good, but it sounds like he was not used very well in Frida. Like even in the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, he's really good until the last two.
I mean, he's really good in a lot of things, but yeah, it's just his appearance in Frida is bizarre.
But Rounders made me realize how good Matt Damon's reaction shots are. Like, I think out of all of the actors that we watch normally, they say you can tell the mark of a good actor by their reaction shots. And, I think Matt Damon probably could have made a career out of just, like, staring at the camera or just slightly off of the camera and not doing anything. But when he goes into his whole, like, Matt Damon improvising thing, where he's like, hey, man, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, oh, God. Matt Damon cringe acting, maybe. So it's weird to see how much time has changed since 1998. Yeah, but
it's true.
If you haven't seen Rounders, I highly recommend it. It is definitely a high witness.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
It's a poker movie, but it kind of assumes you don't need to know anything about poker. But it also kind of talks in that Star Wars speak where like they will explain one or two things. But then the rest of the movie is like all in talking, all like they're like, oh yeah, I'm a rounder. Give me 3 stacks of high society. Grab the road Bible. All of this stuff where they're like, they don't intend you to, like, if you know it, then you know it. And if you don't, then you can follow along by context clues, which I like personally. I like the way that happens.
I don't know, man. Anytime I hear someone talk about Matt Damon, I just think of Team America World Police. Where he shows him, he's like, Matt Damon. Matt Damon. Damon's had, this whole period where he was a really good actor back in like the 90s and 2000s, and he was giving these very committed performances.
Yeah.
And now it's just sort of like, I'm Jason Bourne again. Or even worse is, like Ford v Ferrari, where he's like, I'll just be Matt Damon with a Southern accent.
I mean, yeah. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I still love Matt Damon in movies because I forgot he was in Ford v Ferrari. I was like, oh yeah, I loved him in Ford v Ferrari. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
it's basically
he plays
just Matt
Ford.
Damon doing Matt Damon, which is weird when you contrast him with like Christian Bale, who's like so method and yet over the top that it's goofy. And then you have like Matt Damon, like they're like oil and water right now, which it's like it's a little weird. But yeah, I sometimes wonder if Matt Damon in real life is an asshole.
I don't know.
I think if we ever get Minnie Driver on the podcast, she can probably, go at length about it. Because I think he announced that he broke up with her like on a talk show and she had no idea. So I think she would be an interesting get for more than just that. Because like, Minnie Driver, she's like a good actress and she can comment on how unless you're in action movies as an older actress, you don't get roles anymore.
Yeah,
that's neither here nor there. Which I guess kind of leads us into The Old Guard,
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I guess in a weird way, right? If Gabe, I'm gonna spring something on you. If you were going to summarize The Old Guard, how would you summarize it?
Bad.
Oh, I meant the plot, not your reaction to it.
No, that's my
no.
summary of it. Just bad.
Hold on. For the record, as I was watching the movie, I got incredibly excited because I knew this episode was going to be a lot of fun. I was very excited to talk to you about this movie.
I was gonna say, like, I feel like I've been overly positive on all my reviews and on all our shows lately. We haven't seen a movie in a while that I've just thought was crap.
I think that's why I was excited about this as I was watching it. Even though I don't have the exact same reaction to you, I was really looking forward because I wasn't sure where you were going to go with this.
It's every like creator-owned comic book trope gone wrong. It's about a group of immortal warriors who like keep dying and coming back to life, who fight as like soldiers of fortune essentially across the centuries. But there's like a thing where it's like suddenly you just can lose your immortality. And so our
Right,
main
because
character,
stakes.
Yeah, because they gotta have stakes. So our main character, played by Charlize Theron, is like the leader of this group. She's ultra ancient, and she is beginning to lose her immortality just as a new immortal kind of emerges. And then there's a subplot about like tech startups or something. But
No, there's a subplot where science bad. That's the moral
where
of the
young
story.
CEOs bad.
Well, even like because they're like, oh, this for the greater good of science. What are you gonna do? We're gonna lock you in a room and just take samples of you for the rest of your life. Like, oh, this is what you think about the scientific process.
We can get into the moral quandaries of this further on.
Yes,
But like, I wanted to like it. It's like, hey, look. The only reason we watched it is because it's from the year 2020.
yes,
And I was just like, can we watch something from this year? And oof,
well,
it's not good.
I would say it was almost a mistake. Except I think we're gonna get. I think like the conversation we're gonna have is gonna be worth it. It's disappointing because I think there's a lot of elements of the movie that work really well. Well, no, that's not true. I think this is.
Let me give it a little bit of praise. Actually, no.
Well, here's the thing. Like, I think for the most part, the actors do a good job, but in different ways. Okay. Mm-hmm. So, like, Theron is, she's Charlize Theron. She's basically a little bit more dialing it in from what she did in Atomic Blonde, which was also, like, in hindsight, Atomic Blonde is just kind of okay. Like, she's good in this. She's always good when she gets to play, like, lethal badass who does action scenes and breaks people. So she's good in the action scenes. She's good enough in the dialogue scenes to, like, to buy it. Matthias Schoenaerts, I actually like him in this movie, but the script really doesn't.
The script does not give him much to do, and he is a very good actor.
He is, and like there's something that happens in the movie that I was like, oh, like this feels like it should have been done better because there are elements of this thing that work and elements that don't. And it's the same with Chiwetel Ejiofor. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, there are things that are working and a lot that don't, but they don't mix well.
To your point, it's like the best thing about the movie is that there's a lot of good actors in it. Mm-hmm. Charlize Theron is always good. Matthias Schoenaerts always good. Chiwetel Ejiofor is always good. Kiki Layne is like kind of an up and comer. Like, I don't think she's realized her full potential yet, but I think she's got it in her to be a really great actress. But they all sound like they're reading a script that was written by Greg Rucka, which they were.
Well, so okay, here's another example. Like Kiki Layne, right? She's amazing in Beale Street Could Talk, right? She's fantastic in that. But in this, I feel like she was miscast, and yet she does a fantastic job because in all of the action scenes, when she has to be like tactical military person, I've seen very few people who look as convincing about being tactical military person as she does.
I know. It's weird. Like, all of her physical acting is really good.
Yes.
Like, she inhabits the role really well. with her like mannerisms and stuff. It's just like as soon
she's so
as soon as she
anno-
opens her mouth to speak, it's like garbage words come out, and I'm like, oh, I'm sorry you had to say that.
I just feel bad for her character because her character is so annoying, and it doesn't help that her voice is also a little bit whiny. Like it was in if Beale Street Could Talk, but it worked to her advantage because she was like, young. In this, it's like, I don't know if I buy your voice as like this rough and tough military person who's been in the military a long time, and part of it is the lines that she's given.
Yep.
But physically, she's so awesome that like all of the action scenes she's in, which equate to about 2, she's really, really good. And like the guys who play as the 2 lovers, I guess spoilers, they're really good too. But they're good because they're not taking the lines of dialogue seriously, except for that one moment where they had to really sell it. And
In the van.
see, but I actually like I bought it. I was like, okay, what
That
he's
was
saying
cringe.
is kind of cringe, but like the emotion behind it, I buy it. And then the kiss I didn't buy. I was like, yeah, nah.
Well, but
That kiss-
it's kind of the thing where it's like okay, so for those of you who have not seen the movie, two of these immortal warriors are like an Arab dude and a French dude who met during the Crusades and fell in love and have been together for 1,000 years. And there's a scene where like
It's basically Good Omens, yeah.
Yeah, they get captured, and then some tough guy makes like a homophobic remark, and then one of them starts monologuing, and it's like it feels like a comic book panel because the camera just like you're in a moving car, and the camera just sits on this guy for like an
super stable.
incredibly long time. Where it's like in a comic book panel, it's one panel where you just have this incredibly verbose speech in a single speech bubble. Mm-hmm. But in a movie, it feels like interminably long. And like he sells the emotion of it really well, but what he's saying is so ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what the hell am I watching? And that's kind of a synopsis that kind of describes the whole movie. The whole movie is like that. It's like this would be fine if it was in a comic book panel, because this is based on a graphic novel written by Greg Rucka, and then Greg Rucka also wrote the script for this movie. Mm-hmm. Like, there's a lot of scenes that are like, okay, this shot would be great as a comic book panel. Playing it out in real time is horrible.
It's so bad.
All of the, like, when Charlize Theron first picks up Kiki Lane's character, she's like a Marine in Afghanistan who dies and comes back to life. And also, it's weird how, like, her squad mates suddenly become super douchey to her.
Right.
When she returns from the dead. Like, the chick with the massive eyebrows.
Yeah.
Just goes from being her best friend to suddenly a total bitch. Just flip of a switch. And I'm like, that's a completely unmotivated character change. Why is everyone being so weird?
Yeah.
And like all of the stuff, like when she comes back to life and is like trying to assess her situation in at that base camp, is really poorly done. It's edited too fast. And there's that moment where she starts playing like Frank Ocean in her iPhone or whatever.
Yeah.
And like it's supposed to be like dramatic and cool, but it's all done so quickly that you don't feel any build up. So it's just like, this is just an excuse to play Frank Ocean in your movie.
Yeah, and I was actually kind of hoping like she would die, like she was gonna die, and then like the person who was her friend, like in an exciting twist of fate, was gonna like have something to do with the movie. But as soon as she died, I was like, oh, this is what we're doing. We're doing this.
We're doing this.
We're doing this.
But yeah. So anyway, Charlize Theron comes to like essentially kidnap her.
Yeah.
And they
and
have
force
like,
her to
back
do
and
her
forth
ideology.
banter. Yeah, it forces her into her ideology, and Charlize Theron like keeps calling her kid in the most cliched way possible. Their back and forth is cliche and boring, and then they have a completely unnecessary fight scene that's actually one of the better fight scenes in the movie.
I don't know. Like I actually liked I liked most of the fight scenes in the movie.
I didn't like much of the action. I thought it was
really
fine. I thought like the action to me was very, like competent, but it wasn't like blood pumping excitement. It was just kind of like, oh yeah, this is fine.
Oh,
there's a lot of shootouts in empty rooms with no props.
Well, I don't know. I love the last fight scene, which we'll get to why I liked it later, but I can see that. There's quite a lot of, because looking back on it, like there's quite a lot of forgettableness in the entire movie, which is never what you want your movie to be. But yeah, go ahead. They're on the plane and they're fighting.
Yeah, and like that's the fight scene doesn't need to happen at all, but it's one of the better fight scenes in the movie just because it's got like, I think because the space is so tight, they have to be creative with how they use the camera, and that actually sells a lot of the moves and the impact more than other chunks of the movie where it's just kind of like, make sure we see what happens, but edit it quick enough so it doesn't get boring.
Yeah.
But don't, like, there's nothing about it feels like creative or like they were really into what they were doing. It's just like, oh, we have to have some action here.
Yeah, I would say
Like that-
again. I would say until the end sequence, because it's probably cliche how they did it, but I felt like the way that they used the invincibility that each of the characters had, which again, like their recovery time for the invincibility was not consistent.
It's all over the map.
Yeah, but like leading into that scene, like they didn't really care about it, but because of events that happen in the movie, they all of a sudden have like a thing to protect, and because they have this thing to protect, they can now use their bodies as like shields for this thing, and so you get a lot of really interesting movement in the space of like, oh, this person is going to take the bullet so the other person can pop up behind them and shoot them, and like
a little bit. They
yeah,
don't lean into
yeah.
it as much as they should.
Yeah. Well, and I will say I found the last hour of the movie a lot better than the first hour.
Yeah, I would say that's fair.
Because, but with all that said, the plot is fucking stupid as all hell.
Oh, it's so stupid.
Oh my god, I like, it's the most. So spoilers, they tease a potential spin-off movie, which should have probably been the plot for this movie. But of course,
should have. It would have been way more interesting.
Yeah, but like they have to like establish the world or whatever. So because they have to establish the world, they put the most milquetoast cliche plot elements with the most milquetoast cliche.
Okay, so
plot
the plot of the movie is evil young tech CEO of a big pharma company,
played by
is
Dudley
trying to-
Dursley,
played by Dudley Dursley.
who is generally good, but in this he's
bad. He is trying to develop a drug to essentially like extend human life indefinitely, and he sees these immortals as the key to doing that. So he has Chiwetel Ejiofor and his team capture these guys and take them to his secret lab at the top of a skyscraper in London that just looks like Riz Ahmed's evil villain corporation from Venom. It's the exact same thing. It's the same thing. Except I think Riz Ahmed he's more straight up evil, where he's like, I'm evil because I'm evil. Ha 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 ha. Mm-hmm. Whereas this guy like has some other motivation where he's like, I'm trying to help people and make some money.
I want to make money.
So yeah, they're captured and they're gonna have all these horrible, torturous. They're gonna have essentially body parts extracted, which will then grow back indefinitely until these miracle drugs can be made. And Kiki Lane has to save them. And I'm trying to think if there are any more like wrinkles to that. I mean, they have this thing because they can live forever. Essentially, they're really intent on avoiding capture, because one of them was captured in like the 1500s and was tried as a witch and buried under the sea in an Iron Maiden, left to just drown, come back to life and drown again for hundreds of years, which, is understandably horrible. So they're trying to avoid situations like that at all costs.
Well, apparently that was the director was like, oh, because I think in the original story, the person gets washed overboard and drowns over and over. But the director was like, no, let's imprison her in the Iron Maiden for the imagery and have her drown. And I'm like, ooh, in my mind,
That's
that
a
is
nice
actually,
touch.
yeah, that's like really sinister. That would create a incredibly great villain who is teased at in this movie and not actually in it.
Oh, yeah. So there's a little like pre-credits sequence where she shows up to like tease a sequel, and it's awful. But let's talk about the actual movie, not
let's not talk about the potential
a
spin-off
future
that's
sequel that we're
probably
never going to get because
happening,
this movie kind of sucks.
Yeah. Well, I think apparently it was really well regarded.
Well, it's
like-
got an 80% on Rotten Tomatoes or something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, it's got an 80% on Rotten Tomatoes. It was viewed by 70 million people according to Netflix Analytics, which the fuck knows what that means. So I think, I mean, on a budget of $70 million, there's a strong possibility if Charlize Theron puts her money back into it that that there will be a sequel. So, you know.
Who knows, man? It's weird because it's like, I don't know why it's so well regarded. Like, I was reading some of the little review snippets, and it's like, great action? No. Like, you remember the big...
Yeah, no, I agree. I actually
You remember
agree,
the
like,
big action sequence
passable
in
action.
John Wick 3, where, with the dogs, and it's like, it's shockingly boring.
That's how you
This
felt.
whole movie is like that, but worse. It's also butt ugly. Like, everything is just ugly and boring looking. Like,
Yeah.
the first half of the movie, everything's the same sandy brown color. And then the second half of the movie, everything is this bluish gray color.
Industrial blue. Yeah, that's what I'm calling
it's
it. That's what we're calling it now.
hideous.
Industrial blue with lens flare.
I guess because we brought up the plot, we can get into the moral quandary of it. The way it sets up the villain is so weird because it's like, you know, these people are born with immortality just sort of by happenstance, and they're like, they try to do good, and this guy's like, well, I'm gonna, you know, we can use you guys to build a drug to essentially like cure all genetic diseases or whatever.
Right.
But it's like the way he went about it is wrong, so it's a bad idea because he's greedy, you know. And it seems to have this message of, and then at the end you have Chiwetel Ejiofor who's tracked their exploits across time. And he's like, look at all the good you've done in the world by being action heroes. And they're like, yeah, who needs to use science to solve human problems when we can shoot people instead?
So let's start with Chiwetel Ejiofor and the villains in general, because can we just say spoilers from here on out? Mm-hmm. Okay, so spoilers. Matthias Schoenaerts the big twist is that he betrays all of the other immortals to get them captured, so that they can kill Charlie. They can find a way to kill Charlize Theron because she's
She's
lived.
been wanting to die for a very long time.
Yeah, and so character-wise, I actually like his motivation, but it's so horribly baked into the plot that they're like, oh, we need to have this dramatic plot twist. It's like they wanted to have the idea of like I put it as like goodwill. How did I put it? I took notes. The cost of nobility. He has a noble intention, but the noble intention is horribly executed in the plot. And it's the same with Chiwetel Ejiofor. He's like, oh, but you guys have done good, and my wife has died because of a terrible disease, and she couldn't speak. And therefore, I want to force some good to come from you by capturing you and developing a drug to cure disease, which, again, is also a horrible idea for different moral reasons, and you might oppose me on that. But the way that they go about it is they have these guys who do bad things, but for noble reasons. But Chiwetel Ejiofor's noble reason, to me, doesn't make sense, seeing how they operate. Like, if he's been observing them for so many years...
If he had any awareness...
Right, which he clearly does. He clearly is aware, which then makes the end confusing because Charlize Theron's like, you're going to find the people that we need to save/kill to have a ripple effect on the world, like the butterfly effect. I'm like, dude, motherfucker doesn't have a time machine. He's not going to go to the future, see who needs to be saved, and then go back. It's still completely random happenstance.
Yeah. No, yeah, it's like they go around doing shooty stabby stuff and unintentionally creates all these good consequences.
Yes.
Which
but we're
is
going to try and
like-
predict, but now we're going to try and predict which ones are
But now
good.
that's the goal. It's like our whole mission is to do shooty stabby stuff and then hopefully more good unintentional consequences will ensue. And the other thing too, it's like...
It's really dumb.
Well, but the other thing too is it's like, yeah, the bad guys are all bad. Like, they do terrible shit and they're very clearly evil, but they're trying to do like a good thing. Which is weird because that's not like, if you're going to have a villain with like complex motivations, you also need to have a complex villain.
Right.
Like,
and having a mix between Lex Luthor and the Joker is not...
Well, but it's like...
does not a
okay,
complex villain make.
Take the Joker or whatever. Or no, take Thanos.
Yeah.
Thanos has complex motivations, and he's a complex villain. Like, he's not entirely unsympathetic. He's not like this cackling cartoon character bad guy. He's like,
Right.
you know, I do feel bad about this, but I think this is what's necessary. And that's what makes him an interesting enemy for our heroes. It's weird when you have like, okay, it's like, look, I know what we're doing is bad, but we believe it's necessary to do this in order to, you know, make the world a better place. And it's like, okay, interesting motivation. Now, how do you turn that into a character? And when they turn it into a character, it's cackling like computer boy, madman cartoon villain who's just evil and laughing all the time because he's evil.
It's Lex Luthor from Justice League.
It's horribly translated, and it's like Chiwetel Ejiofor, I think, does a good job of being like the guy who's like, well, we have to do some bad things for good reasons, but is
Right.
misled. But at the same time, it's like you know the people you're working with. You've
Right.
seen how they operate. You can't have any illusions about what you're doing, and yet he has all these illusions about what he's doing.
Yeah, it's like the character that they wanted to write is not reflected on the character that is there in reality, because he's too, like, Chiwetel Ejiofor is way too sympathetic from the very beginning.
Yep.
Like, he already kind of has that kind of the sad Chiwetel Ejiofor look in the beginning, and you're like, I really don't want him to be a villain. And then he does something like really horrendous, but that really horrendous thing is kind of like, but he knows how to like avoid out of it. And then he's like, oh no, bail, guys. And they're like, no, we have you like confined to this. But like his motivations, to me, just are not consistent. And I know that it's like, oh well, they're not consistent because humans are different and all humans, like, their motivations can change. But like it's not that. It's like the history of this character that they're trying to portray versus his actual actions don't seem to intersect in a believable human way.
Not at all. And it gets worse for the main bad guy, Dudley Dursley.
Yeah, and I mean, the main bad guy, like, to me, it's just all about he wants to make money. Like, he doesn't necessarily want to change the world. He just wants to make money. But they started off with him making this speech about, I'm here to change the world. We're going to change the world by making everyone immortal, which to me is not a good idea, because then
It's
like,
a terrible idea.
like we get the Thanos thing where like someone comes down and is like, you guys have been living forever, you've drained all the resources, now we have to wipe out half the population, but we can't because you're immortal. Like,
Well, but would resources even matter if you were immortal? Like, would you even need to eat if you were immortal?
well, I was thinking about that, and I was like, why are none of these immortals just like giant human fat people? Because like if I knew I couldn't die, I would just become a bowling ball and just eat all of the food that I love all
Just
the
eat
time.
ice cream every day for
Yeah.
every meal. Yeah.
Like, you would eventually get used to vomiting, you know, like where it's not painful anymore. Like, you know, like, or like eat something that's really, really bad for you, but you're like, the pain is temporary. I'll revive from it. But maybe that's
Yeah.
why you die faster, because they're like, oh, your body took way more abuse. Like, then all of my friends who've been shot millions of times, like, yeah, dude, you got to lay off the Taco Bell. Like, all right.
You gotta stop. You don't lay on the Taco Bell. The other thing, it's like, for a movie that's so deathly serious, like, I feel like the premise is ripe for just like silly comedy.
Yeah. I'm not going to say like in the hands of a more able director. Maybe the problem is like the movie is way too, like, I don't know if this is the right word, but I'm going to say earnest, in the sense of like, we're immortals and we're depressed because we've lived a long time and we can't die. And I've seen my family live and die millions of times. And
Well,
like,
it's like, there's that scene at the very beginning where one of the characters gets Charlize Theron some baklava and she has to guess where it's from.
yeah.
And because she's been all over the world, she can figure it out because she's like done everything and seen everything. And it's like, that's a neat idea and concept, but then when you see it, it seems like so pretentious that you're like, this is stupid as hell. Like, instead of eating baklava, what if she just like took a puffer fish, like an incredibly poisonous delicacy, and just starts eating it, the whole thing? not giving a fuck because she's immortal, you know? Like, what about that?
Or like in Skyfall, the whole like the scorpion drinking game where there's a scorpion on her hand, but instead it's like 1,000 scorpions and she drinks it and gets stung by them all anyway.
She just
then
eats
revives.
the scorpions.
Or like puts a bee in her
It's
mouth,
like-
gets stung.
It's like everyone's an alcoholic because that's like the cool tough guy way to signal that you're depressed.
That's right. I gotta forget about my past by drinking, or by living longer. Apparently,
I'm gonna drink an entire bottle of vodka because that's what cool people do.
I feel like that's just Charlize Theron's go-to because she did that all the time in Atomic Blonde. She's just like vodka.
Well, but you gotta. I think
Stoli.
that's like dumb action movie shorthand, you know?
Yeah. Which, don't get me wrong, this is a dumb action movie.
Oh, it's very dumb.
And yeah,
and it has quote unquote action in it.
When I first put it on, it said inspired by the book, and I was like, oh my god, was this like a written novel? And then I find out at the end, oh, graphic novel, and I was like, oh yeah, that makes a lot more sense.
That makes sense, yeah.
That makes a lot more sense.
Because like, there's a lot of like indie creator-owned comic books that are like this, where it's supposed to be this gritty, dark, realistic kind of low-level superhero stuff, where it's like the superhero's superpower is something really small that are not. It's not very visible. Like they can't get hurt, or they can see into the future or something.
Yeah.
But most of the actual story is like shooty stabby action.
Yeah.
Surrounded by like not great dialogue. And that's what this is. And it follows like a lot of the tropes of superhero action movies, but the action in it is very just walk into a room, shoot people, walk into a hallway, stab people. There's so many like hallway corner shooter moments that I just got tired of it. Like the church sequence is all right. The final shootout I didn't particularly care for. Except there's like one time where they go into a big room and have to clear it out. And there's like the beginning of a cool idea in there where it's like whipping around as they beat up different bad guys. But the way they do the whip pans is like you can tell that they're cutting between those shots.
I actually liked that. I'll tell you why after you're done.
I mean, you can tell they're cutting between the shots, which is fine. The only problem is the next shot afterwards, it's from an odd angle, so you feel like they're in a different room. So it feels like they're in this room that's constantly changing, and you can't get the geography of it straight, which just, it messed with my head a little bit.
Yeah. The only reason I like that is because so often you have these like really pretentious like one-shot takes that are comprised of like 8 or 9 different shots, and they're editing it together seamlessly with whip pans and things like that. And like that was the first time that I was like, they're not even going to I can't think of words. They're not going to pretend like this is a single shot. The way that it's edited, they're like, we're going to do the bare minimum. We're going to do whip pans into the shot and end it, whip pans into the next shot and end it. And
the problem is it looks like it's like if you're doing whip pans, it has to at least seem like all this is taking place in the same
space. Yeah.
It doesn't. It feels like they're whip panning to different places entirely.
But like I appreciate that not every movie needs a contrived single take action scene. Like this movie had enough self-awareness to be like, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to pretend kind of like we're doing it, but we're not going to do that. And I appreciate that as someone who is very tired of these contrived single take action scenes.
Yeah. I think the other issue is that like it's just like you can see everything that's happening, which is good, and sometimes bad because there's a lot of digital blood and no one wants to see digital blood. Netflix.
But it's so much cheaper, says the $70 million movie.
Ugly. It's so ugly. It's so fake looking too. Like, if you want to make sure your action scenes have no impact whatsoever, use digital blood. Because you might as well use no blood at all.
That's true. Although we use digital blood. It is a lot
Yeah,
cheaper.
but that's because we were college students. We have to use digital blood. Like, I can only make so much syrup and carry it around in my car.
Yeah, there's only so many times we can go to Planned Parenthood, get fucking free condoms before they're like,
yeah, exactly.
what the
My
hell is
condom
wrong
budget
with
is
you?
only so big.
You're walking around campus, someone's
use
like,
it
why
all
do you
on special effects.
Anyway.
Anyway. So yeah, Digital Blood is garbage and needs to go away. And then not only that, but it's like the way it's edited is like it's very competent where like every shot has just enough room to breathe but doesn't overstay its welcome, so it keeps a nice pace. However, the angles that they cut between don't always work, and the camera movement from one shot to the next doesn't always work. There's a weird edit where this is not an action sequence, but it is a very intense moment where Charlize Theron is carving up people inside their church hideout, and Matthias Schoenaerts and Kiki Layne have to leave, and it cuts back and forth between them as they're talking back and forth, trying to hurry out of this place. And some of the edits are so incredibly jarring because they like almost break the 180-degree rule.
Mm-hmm.
And Kiki Layne is still inside the building, which is on fire, so it's bright and orange. And then Matthias Schoenaerts is outside at night, where it's like very blue and serene. So when it cuts between the two of them, it feels like they're in completely different locations talking to each other.
Yeah.
And their banter, because they're trying to escape, it's very hurried. Like they're talking very fast and very intensely. So these shots cut back and forth really fast, where it's like you should have just held on Kiki Layne and had Matthias Schoenaerts' audio off screen. But no, you cut back and forth, and I thought like it's almost subliminal. Like I had to rewind that part because there's like 4 cuts in 10 seconds. And I was like, what did I just see?
The movie, I do agree with you. The movie is quite a bit over-edited, which is strange because it actually,
Again,
in the action scenes, it actually holds pretty well on a lot of the shots, I think. Or at least it holds a lot more than some other movies I've watched.
Yeah, no, the action sequences I don't think are over-edited. I don't think
the action sequences are over-edited, but I think there are some like regular dialogue scenes or intro and outro scenes that do feel like they're a little too much razor work.
Yeah.
I did interrupt you when you were talking about the moral quandary of this movie and the whole idea of, because it also talks about like God is dead, there is no God. Like, why would you dare pray to this divine being? But then it kind of reinforces, like, oh, but there is a divine plan because the people you've been saving end up doing this thing for you.
Well, but that's like very, paint by numbers.
Right.
That's storytelling. You have the jaded old person who's disillusioned with the world, and then they meet a young person who helps them, like, rekindle their enthusiasm for life, and then they become a believer, quote unquote, again.
Yeah.
Like that story's been told a million times.
But you would think that like Chiwetel Ejiofor would just like tell Charlize Theron directly, because that as soon as he revealed that, the movie became a lot more interesting to me. I feel like the background and all of the surrounding like buildup of the world is a lot more interesting than the actual movie we got.
Maybe it's
because I like comic books.
Yeah, I mean, I like comic books too, to a degree, but I think both are kind of whatever. It's just. Yeah, the moral quandary of the movie is weird, not necessarily because the actual quandary itself is weird. Like, at the end of the day, our heroes are in the right because it's unethical to force anything on anyone in that way. So they're in the right here, but the movie does not a great job of showing it because it's like, the bad guy has this very understandable motivation. Mm-hmm. But then he's just this cackling madman, so the two don't really line up at all. And then on top of that, they never really explain why he's wrong, or they never demonstrate why he's wrong. He's wrong because he's this evil douchebag, not because his idea is bad, which is how you should be doing it.
Especially in a movie that has so many characters who are sympathetic. Like, we're just going to make one character who's completely unsympathetic, and yet his motivations are going to be good. That's how you write villains, right?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it makes no sense at all because it's like compared to Venom, which is a similarly ugly, crappy, boring movie, but is held together by Tom Hardy. Like Riz Ahmed's character is basically the same villain as the guy in The Old Guard. It's just like he's this cackling evil douchebag, and his whole evil plan is being a cackling evil douchebag. And his motivations are, I'm a cackling evil douchebag. Whereas with this guy, it's like, I want to save the world through means that, you know, the ethics are questionable and turn out to be unethical, but it's kind of like, I'm willing to do bad things for what I believe are the right reasons. And it's like, okay, interesting motivation for your bad guy. What is your bad guy like? Mwahaha, I am evil and a jerk.
Let me twist my mustache a little bit harder.
Yeah, and so it ends up that the reasoning for why his motivations are bad, or the reason for why he's evil, it's not that his ideas are evil, it's that he's a jerk, which is terrible writing.
Yeah. I think,
And again, to compare it to Avengers again, Thanos is a bad guy because his ideas are evil. They sound good on the surface, but if you think about it for 2 seconds, you go, oh wait, I can see how he could convince himself of this, but he's wrong. And the movie shows you that outright, to an extent. Infinity War the writing is hit or miss, but
Infinity War's writing on Thanos is really bad because there are so many people who are like, no, Thanos is clearly right, and they do a really bad job in Endgame of justifying why Thanos is wrong. They're like, but the rivers are getting better. I'm like, but that's not. No, you're making it sound like Thanos is right. I missed this person. That's still not good.
But yeah, like you watch Infinity War, and if you have a functioning brain, you will see that, like, okay, Thanos' character lines up with his motivations. We still root against him because even though his ideas sound good on the surface, they're wrong. Whereas it's like that connection is never made in the old guard. So it almost seems like the movie is not making any sort of statement on this guy's ideas. They're just saying, well, he's a jerk. And that leaves it open to the point of view that, like, well, no, maybe he was right all along. He was just kind of a douche, so he had to go because he's annoying.
Well, and again, I think it's because the means of acquisition, which again, this is kind of weak sauce, but like, I have a good motivation. How do I get to my goal is horrible. And it's shared by the scientist who's just like prodding them with a bunch of needles all the time and getting biopsies and stuff. And like, it really weakly enforces the whole thing about like, oh, we're going to be putting people in cages. So like,
it's funny how blatantly evil the lady scientist is.
Yes, too. Yeah. Like I said, this movie feels more like science bad, spirituality good than it should. Like their view of science is incredibly simplified and horribly unethical. And like, I'm sure there's room for that. I'm sure there's a lot of that happens in reality. But in this movie, it's like, we're not going to represent the good part of science. We're going to tease at the fact that maybe it is good to cure some things that shouldn't need to happen to people disease-wise. But at the same time, you don't want to make you don't want to make the freaking elixir of life here. Like, no, that would be bad. I mean, but they never address that either.
And they never address it at all. And I think all he cares about is his competitors. He doesn't want them to also have the elixir of life.
Right.
Because only he wants to make money from the elixir of life, which is like weird, but okay. And it's so bizarre. Like, he's trying to make everyone immortal, but he cares more about the profit off of making everyone immortal than being immortal.
Yeah, like, dude, who cares? Like, as soon as you make everyone immortal, put out another like placebo wonder drug, quote unquote. And if they're immortal, they'll just keep buying it once they're prescribed to it, and you'll make profits.
It's like, if he was this cackling evil rich guy, wouldn't it make more sense if he's like, I want to live forever because I'm a crazy rich person.
Yes.
Not like, I want to become more rich off of making everybody else live forever.
Yeah. Again, that's why, like, I feel like they wanted to focus a lot on the characters and the action and didn't care about the plot, but the plot is so dumb.
I know.
It is so stupid on so many levels that...
In an action movie, plot drives everything else. You know, everyone's like, well, in a good story, you know, character should drive the plot. Well, sure. In an action movie, plot drives everything. Plot drives action, plot drives character. So if your plot sucks, everything else is probably also going to suck.
Well, not necessarily. Your plot can... Well, yeah, that's true. Because you can have a simple or a cliche plot, but as long as it's solid, it's fine.
Yeah, because there's a lot of action movies that have very simple, cliched plots, but they have amazing action sequences and really memorable character moments because they're working off of a solid foundation.
Right.
It doesn't matter how interesting or complicated your characters are or how technically brilliant your action scenes are if your plot is garbage.
Right.
Because there's no glue holding it all together.
And again,
all your like neat character moments are going to feel unearned.
Yeah. Well, and again, in the issue with this movie isn't that it has a cliched plot line. It's that it's very poorly implemented. It what?
Yeah. That it has a bad plot line.
Yeah, it's dumb. Well, it's kind of similar with Venom too. Like Venom,
Yeah.
like we were talking about it, and the only reason Venom is somewhat watchable is because the movie is fast. Like the movie moves fast because they know that the only thing we want to see is Tom Hardy being crazy.
Yep.
And so like the moments that drag, luckily don't drag too long because they're like, we're not going to bother explaining this plot thing because we know the only reason you're here is to watch Tom Hardy go fucking crazy, which is also one of the reasons why Lockout is almost watchable, but it's still bogged down by too much stupid plot and not enough Guy Pearce being fucking awesome. So,
yeah, I think the other thing that's really frustrating to me is I think like the greatest type of moral dilemma story that has ever been conceived is the type that's like how far is a person with good intentions willing to go to achieve what they believe is the best outcome for the world?
Right.
Which is like that's never not fascinating, and I always hate it when it gets botched because it's like you took something with so much promise and just completely fucked it up.
Yeah.
I think that's partly why I hate Rogue One so much, because like the first trailer for that movie makes you think that's what it's going to be about. It's going to be about like our plucky young heroes are trying to do a good thing, and they end up in some really fucked up situations, and they have to ask themselves, how far are we willing to go to win?
Yeah.
And none of that ever happens.
No.
It's just a standard, like, go to the place, shoot the bad guy, go to another place, shoot the bad guy, get the thing, rinse and repeat.
But Diego Luna shot that guy in the beginning of the movie because he's morally questionable. Oh God,
It's morally questionable because of that accent.
Like I like all Star Wars movies, you know this. But God, it's really hard for me to like Rogue One. Like it's really tough for me to like that, which apparently makes me a bad Star Wars fan because I don't like movie attempting to be dark. It's bad.
What do you mean attempting? It doesn't attempt.
No, it's like, oh, we're gonna be the dark, gritty Star Wars movies. You remember the stormtrooper outfits? We put dust on it. You remember like people die. Our main heroes die. A blind guy dies. A guy with a big machine gun dies. Riz Ahmed. Hey, dude, we've mentioned Riz Ahmed in 2 different movies today.
Yep.
He's on the comeback trail, but he fucking dies. Like,
remember
he gets
colors?
tortured.
They're muted now.
The what?
Remember colors? They're muted now.
Yeah.
That's how you know this movie is dark and gritty.
Yeah, well, I mean, they try to, but that beach is just too luscious.
It's too beautiful. It's beautiful.
They
it
couldn't
looks so
eat that.
like I want to take a vacation there.
Yeah, I know. I was like, hey, I'd take a vacation during war-torn freaking... I wonder if that's why they shot there. They're like, we need a different Star Wars world. Well, I'm due for a vacation. I just won an Academy Award, so yeah, let's shoot there. God. So I was reading the behind the scenes of The Old Guard. Turns out that part of the movie was shot in Sandwich, Kent, which is a place I've always wanted to visit because I like the Earl of Sandwich.
He invented your favorite food item?
He invented my favorite food item. So the movie automatically gets like 3 points for that, except that it was portraying France. So it automatically loses those 3 points. So it's a net
France
gain of
has
0.
Baguettes, one of the best sandwich breads.
That is true. That is true. But you know, everything has to balance out in our ratings for The Old Guard.
The other thing that's interesting is like our heroes walk around in like body armor covered in guns, and then they have like old timey swords.
Yeah.
And then Charlize Theron's axe. It's such a comic book axe because it's from an unnamed era in the past that is now lost to history. You know.
Right.
And like that's cool. It feels weird in this movie, but it's cool because this movie is so blah. For it to have any kind of quirks or any aspect to it that's like cool or neat just feels off.
Also, how many fucking safe houses did they have? What did you forget to mention?
The music.
What music?
The soundtrack, not the score. the soundtrack to this movie is maybe the worst I have ever heard in a movie ever. For every action sequence starts with some god-awful pop song. And they all sound the same, and they're all like, I don't know when this started. Like, this maybe, it's like a trend for the last, 3 or 4 years. All these pop songs have these singers that sound like they've had Novocaine shot into their cheek, and they're singing out of the side of their mouth as their face slowly falls off. And, I think, Khalid is one of these people who sounds like that. I find him completely intolerable. But it's a trend now. Everyone's singing like this. And it's... every action sequence starts off with, this slow, dramatic song that's supposed to be, give you all the feels or something. And it's the cringiest shit I have ever heard. And the lyrics are so on the nose, too. It's all that, I'll never stop fighting, blah, 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 blah crap. The soundtrack for this movie... maybe the single worst movie soundtrack ever.
Wow. I don't remember any of the music in this movie at all.
You are a lucky man.
I feel like I am, but I also it's kind of depressing that for Volker Bertelmann and Dustin O'Halloran that I don't remember any of the music. I'm trying to too. I'm actively trying to I remember this.
I need to look up the Old Guard soundtrack right now just so I can read off songs that are trash.
I'm trying to think of some of the songs they played, and I can't think of anything. It's just
because it's all this new pop shit. I mean, yeah, they have Frank Ocean, who's always good. I don't think you can ever get negative points for that. He 2 seconds of one of his songs is in the movie, and that's fine because he's always good. But everything else is horrible. You have Elle King, Baby Outlaw. She's annoys me to no end. Ruel, The World We've Made. It's one of those super on-the-nose songs they play either during an action sequence or at the very end. And again, both her and Elle King sounds like they've had Novocaine shot into their face before they start singing.
Yeah.
Oh, they have a Khalid song in this. There you go.
What a surprise!
He's in it, mumbling his way through a bunch of crap.
I can see how this movie cost $70 million to make, but I'm also amazed that this movie cost $70 million to make.
This movie looks like it... If it cost $70 million to make, all of it went to the actors. All of it went to... $50 million was on Charlize Theron.
$50 million went to Charlize Theron. She's a producer, so she put money in. But yeah.
Oh my gosh, I feel bad.
She put money in to get back end. But look, hey, Charlize Theron, good for you for putting money into projects that you think would be fun to do. And I'm never gonna front an actor for doing that. I'm surprised De Niro didn't put money into Ronin, for example. But the movie also a lot of the money went to the locations. A lot of the money went to the action scenes, I'm sure, because the action scenes, even though they looked like ass for I guess for you they looked like ass. There's a lot that went into it. I will say this about the action scenes: it felt so video gamey. Because the first action scene they did were against a bunch of soldiers of war, and then later on they did an action scene against a bunch of cops, and then the last one was against a bunch of urban soldiers of war, and I was just they're swapping out costumes like they swap out bad guy palettes in 3D video games. They're all the same guys with the same guns, but they just look a little bit different. And I know that's the way it is in a lot of movies. But for some reason, this is the movie where I was this looks like playing Ninja Gaiden Black. They're all they just upscale. They just swapped out the palettes, and you're fighting the same fucking guys over and over and over.
It's the same. Yeah, well, it's like in Ghost of Tsushima. You're fighting the same Mongols. It's just some of them have red shirts, some of them have blue shirts, some of them have no shirts.
Exactly. They're oh, well, these guys are, the police guards are the enemies in this location. We have to have them as police guards. Ugh, Jesus Christ. The whole, conflicted motivation of our main character, Nile, I guess because she was in denial about her immortality. No, we're not going to go with that. But, her whole conflict, I did not give two shits about. you know, like Matthias Schoenaerts's conflict. They might as well have just hired Ben Affleck because he was just so dopey. Like, I am depressed because I've lived so long. Like Ben Affleck, hey, he would be a good immortal in these movies. Get him for the third movie, I guess, if you ever make it.
He could have. I mean, if he's still like in the way back mode, and when they make a sequel, he could be in it.
I feel like he's been that way since The Town, because I was rewatching The Town and I was like, hey, yeah, it's my favorite version of Ben Affleck. Like depressed, formerly prodigal son, now depressed loser doing what he has to survive Ben Affleck of the modern day. His Superman movie would have been or his Batman movie would have been interesting.
Yeah, it would have.
What else have you to say about the old guard?
I'm trying to think. Is there something good I can say about it?
Aside from the fact that Kiki, I want to call her Kiki Palmer, but I know she's not Kiki Palmer. Kiki Lane like that first scene where she's going against that terrorist and she just fucking guns him down immediately. I was like, Jesus Christ, this is a fucking soldier. Like,
Yep.
Anytime she had to handle an automatic firearm, I totally bought it. 100%. Oh,
It's one of the, like all the actors are really good. It's just I feel like they're not given enough to work with, or they're
I know.
not given the right stuff to work with.
like, you know how we talk about there's that nebulous thing for a movie to be shiny and chrome or practically perfect? There's like a nebulous thing going on in this movie where nothing really connects well. Like, because like I can't explain it fully. Except I want to make this point. The way that Dudley Dursley dies in the movie was fucking badass to me.
Oh yeah, that
Because
was
he takes
a pretty cool bit.
like he tries to shoot Charlize Theron, no, they fake the shot, and then he takes the axe to the face, and then he's about to shoot Charlize Theron, which like I was actually like, oh my god, this is actually getting tense. And freaking Kiki Lane like pile drives him out of the window onto the car, which you kind of knew was coming. You knew that someone had to jump out of the window and hit the car. And like, yes, it's kind of cliche because she didn't want to jump out of the plane, but it's so fucking awesome in the movie. I was 100% on board with that. And that, if there's nothing else good, that was my good thing about the movie.
That is a very good thing. It was set up well, and it was a nice little payoff.
And fucking watching her Wolverine style get all of her bones unbroken, like, kind of a cliche at this point, but
good.
I enjoyed that. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
that's cool, that's fun. So we finally found our one decent to good thing about the movie.
Yes.
And again, I think another good thing is all of the actors are really good. They just it just does not coalesce in a way that works.
Yeah.
So should we get into final ratings?
Sure.
All right. What's yours?
It's mediocre.
For me, it actually started off as like a high fine, and in discussion with you, I will go down to it's fine. Like, it's not the worst piece of crap I've ever seen. Like, it's always fun to see Charlize Theron kick ass, but it's not special.
No.
It's and at least it like I feel like at least the director had her heart in the right place ish.
Yeah, I think so.
So
I mean, I think the music really
that was the
took it down a notch, because it's like the action sequences, they're okay, but I think with that music playing over them, it becomes unbearable.
that was the final spike in the Iron Maiden, as it were.
Yes.
Yeah, it is bad. I wonder if that's like it is weird.
Which like makes me worried for future, action blockbusters too, because it's like, is James Gunn's Suicide Squad gonna sound like this? Like, are other superhero action movies that maybe aren't as super powered as the Avengers gonna sound like this?
With whiny pop song coming over, explicitly stating the movie themes.
Yeah, and well, the other thing that was crazy too is I was looking at the soundtrack. I didn't realize there were that many different whiny pop songs in it, because they all sound the same. Like, they're all kind of recyclable in my mind.
Yeah.
But there's like a ton of them, and I'm like, whoa, this is crazy. And the fact that the lyrics just state the themes of the scene just on the nose, or
Yeah.
ugh.
Well, it's made worse by the fact that it does it multiple times. So like you can get away with it maybe once when it's a very like let's take Lord of the Rings: Return of the King, for example. They have the scene where the guys are the last vestige of Faramir's crew riding headlong and they're going to die. And you have Pippin start singing his song, and it's mainly the song playing and all of the other sounds recede, and it's like this going to be this really emotional, impactful moment, and it's going to be kind of depressing. And like that's kind of a cliche of it, but that's how that sort of thing works. Even if you have your whiny pop song, it's whiny pop song is loud, all of the other sounds of the action scene are going to be muted, and it's kind of like the last ride or the last fight of these characters. Like,
yeah,
it's going to be really dramatic. But they do it 3 times in the movie, and it loses all.
Lane steps into an elevator to do like to save all our other heroes by herself.
Yes.
And the song it plays is literally called like "Going Down Fighting" or something.
Yeah.
It's bad. Like when Charlize Theron is carving up all those people in the church, the song it plays is it's called like "The World We've Made," and it's like it's how Charlize Theron is tried to do good and the world is shit, and this is the world we've made, and now she's all cruel and carving people up because the whole point of that scene is Kiki Lane is shocked by her display of violence. So yeah, it's that ad nauseum.
It is really sad because they did do a lot of work on the way that there was a lot of work that was put into this movie that just is not really like, because all of the guys, all of the immortals have different fighting styles. And like the couple fight in tandem because they're a couple and they fought in the Crusades together, and Charlize Theron can take on multiple people all alone because she had to do that most of her life. And and like it's like, man, they did put a lot of back end work into the movie,
and there's a lot of very good like practical stunt work and stuff.
Yeah, and like all of that stuff is great, but it doesn't help that your plot is like a steaming pile of dog shit. And I'm being harsh on the plot, but like again, elements don't come together as well as they should.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool choreography and stunt work, which we have not mentioned at all until this point, because everything else is so bad it overrides all that.
Yeah, and or somewhat difficult to see. And it was shot by 2 people. There were 2 people listed as cinematographers, which is very strange. Yeah,
that is strange.
Yeah, but well, let's put the old guard down, take it out to pasture. And these immortals suffering, and move on to our new-ish segment.
We'll see if I just questions.
Yes, we actually have 4 questions. So one of them, I'm just going to kind of read the question, and we can kind of infer how we want to discuss it by that. So we'll start with
you should read who asked it, not first name last name, but like
okay.
We got Joe or whatever who asks.
Yeah. So Jen asks 2 questions. One is regarding timeline. So did you see the new the remake of Beauty and the Beast?
I saw it on a plane, so that's
okay. It's good enough. That's good enough. You didn't have to pay a lot of attention to it. So this is a clarification on timelines in movies. In Beauty and the Beast, Beast saves Belle from the wolves, and he's recovering in a bed, and there's a montage that shows Belle checking on him as he's healing, and like the castle is still getting destroyed and everything like that. And then it like awkwardly cuts to Kevin Kline like in a bed getting tendered to, like, or no, sorry, he's tied to the tree and then he's saved by someone. So in the space of the movie, it has this implication of he's been tied to that tree for a long time because a whole montage scene of time has passed, and then it cuts over to him. Do you read it? Would you read something like this that way, or is it almost like a parallel storyline of, because of the way that the movie is cut, things are happening in tandem, but maybe we went back in time to see Maurice attached to the tree or not? So
I think it's a special situation, because if you cut together a time-passing montage, like a time-passing montage followed by a parallel storyline doesn't really work. Mm-hmm. If you have a storyline that's happening at the same time as your time-passing montage, it needs to be part of the time-passing montage. Like you would have to intercut it with the montage sequence of time going by for it to be parallel. Otherwise, the brain just assumes it's happening after because we see it after.
Suddenly, Maurice has been tied to a tree for like 2.5 months.
Forever.
And you're like, Jesus Christ, how is he still alive?
I know. So
I'm also going to come at this as, one, it's bad direction, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because like Bill Condon is kind of hit or miss in as far as a director goes. In this case, I think it's bad direction and bad editing. And also, I know specifically in this category, it was the whole Disney animated movies have lots of plot holes. Well, people perceive as plot holes, but really they're just plot contrivances or plot conveniences. We need to answer, where was Maurice all of this time? How long had he been searching for Belle?
But that's the thing. It's like conveniences and coincidences happen in real life. Like they're excusable in a fictional story. Like I think a real plot hole is when something literally makes no sense. Like, I don't know, like you have a person in Africa and they're trying to get to Canada to help our hero fight the bad guy, and somehow they appear in Canada an hour later. That's a plot hole. A contrivance is they suddenly appear in Canada.
Yes. Yeah.
Which
so
is
it's
excusable.
right. It's The Dark Knight Rises, right? Like Batman is in Beirut or wherever in the pit. I don't know why I said Beirut. He's in the pit. And then all of a sudden he's back in Gotham and people are like, "Oh my God, it's a plot hole. How did he get there so fast?" And it's like, well, no, it's a plot contrivance. It's probably been maybe a day or two.
It's maybe been a couple days. It's convenient, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's a plot hole. It's like if you establish he got from the Middle East to Gotham in an hour and a half, that's a plot hole.
Yes. Yeah. So that's I think, and in this case, it's funny because in order to try and solve the timeline questions in that live action Beauty and the Beast, like Kevin Kline is great, and he has that line. He's like, "It's snowing in June," and it's like, oh well, that's great because it's Kevin Kline saying that, but we really don't care. Like if you're watching the animated movie, you don't care that it's snowing now and it's not snowing then. Like this is not something that we need to do. Like we need to create a $50 million movie just to answer these questions that some assholes on the internet have.
I know, and wouldn't the movie work better from like a story and emotional perspective if it took place over 6 months, as opposed to being like it's been a week and it's snowing in June?
Yeah.
Somehow.
Well, yeah, I mean the problem in the animated one is like Maurice goes and sets off on his search to find Belle when it's snowing, and then all of a sudden it's raining. It's like spring, and it's like, where did he go? And the animators were talking about how they were gonna like have Maurice like in the pyramids of Giza, waving at the camera like, "Hey guys, I'm over here." And I was like, well, that's fun though because they can make fun of it. So they in the animated film they just kind of don't give a timeline, which is also that's not an issue either.
No, because like you shouldn't. It's weird to try and figure out a timeline when A, the story never calls attention to it. B, it's a freaking fantasy.
Yeah.
It's like it's supposed to be just this indeterminate but very long period of time, because that's probably how long it would take for a hostage situation to turn into a love story.
I mean, in Beast's defense, no, the Beast is never named. In the Beast's defense, which is really funny at the end when she's like, "Beast!" And you're like, wow, they've been together for a couple of days at least, and he doesn't have a name.
Because his name's Biff, and he just didn't want to say it because it's embarrassing.
It's like his first name is actually Beast. The Beast of the castle, But like she is there on her own accord. She's like, oh, I'll swap for my dad because my dad's a fucking idiot.
Yeah.
So
well, she's still his prisoner though.
Yeah. In a very loose sense, like she can't leave even though she does.
I know.
But
it's like what? Okay, what I mean, is
I know what you mean. I know
situation where they don't like each other, for them to start liking each other, it can take a while.
Well, and again, Beauty and the Beast does a good job of figuring it out too. Like, oh, he saved her life, she saved his life. They now can finally confront each other on an eye level, and yada yada yada. And that's why the way the characters develop over time is one of the reasons why I think Beauty and the Beast is one of the best Disney animated movies. Anyway, soapbox done.
Yeah, it endures because people like the characters and their story, not because the timeline is airtight.
Yeah,
it's like my favorite example to always bring up. I remember I was having a conversation with this guy who's a friend of my uncle's and is an animator. We were talking about movies and how much should you explain? How tight does the logic have to be? and we were talking about The Crow, and he's like, man, I fucking love The Crow. You know what's great about The Crow? They don't explain anything. They're like, how did Eric Draven come back to life? Because love or whatever. It's a fantasy. Who cares? And it's true. Like, I think for a lot of movies, it's weirdly self-defeating to try and like determine all the ins and outs of like, well, okay, if Eric Draven can run at 10 miles an hour at top speed across this, how long would it take him to cross all these rooftops to get here?
Right.
It's like, you're worried about that when a magic crow brought him back from
to
the
life.
dead.
I like also having both of us been behind the camera, we know that the filmmakers themselves labor so hard to make sure that a lot of things fit logically, at least logically enough, that it's almost better for filmmakers not to show, but to internally know how it all works. And in the age of the internet, when they release interviews, people usually just take whatever they say as canon anyway. So then it creates this weird sort of like, if you just watch the movie for your own experience, you can enjoy it. But if you delve deeper, you can find out the internal logic and see how that's reflected in the movie.
Yeah.
So.
And anytime there is like a logical, like filmmakers, I think, look out for logical inconsistencies a lot because...
Maybe too much nowadays because of CinemaSins and things like that.
Yeah, maybe too much these days, but like I know from personal experience, if someone points out a logical flaw, it's like, it's crushing to hear.
Yeah.
I just remember Austin saying, why does he need a picture if he already knows what his brother looks like? And I'm like, I want to be dead now.
Yeah, I know. Well, you know, it's funny because I was thinking about just that, and that was actually a very brutal screening of your movie.
It was.
But I always think about that because we're actually talking about, again, plot hole versus plot convenience or movie convenience, and in this case, it actually works. I've actually been wanting to talk to you about that for a while, and we won't dwell too much on it here. But it actually works in the logic of Brother because it is a movie convenience. It's something we take for granted in the movie world, and it makes more sense that the character who hands him the photo would give him a photo instead of explicitly stating who he wants him to get. For whether he's being recorded because he's a mob boss, because of this, because of that, for a variety of reasons, it makes sense that they'd want physical documentation of the transaction, for lack of a better word. And again, it works dramatically. On a dramatic level, it is more interesting to see the picture than to be like, oh, it's this person. And the audience is like, who? Because they won't be introduced to him until a little bit later. And then
exactly.
So
I mean, that was
again,
the big thing for me. It's like, I want to signal that this is the guy.
Right.
You know, instead of having him mention a name and you're like, who's the name? And then someone else shows up and you never connect the name to the person.
Right. And again, it works. It also works on a dramatic level because seeing the insert shot of that is much more dramatic and much more visually interesting than just hearing a name. So
thank you.
You're welcome.
That. I feel better.
You're very because I actually thought a lot about that. I think I was talking to the composer of the movie as well, and when we were talking about Brother and how he was like, no, I really like the foundation of the movie and all this stuff, and he was talking about it, and I was like, you know what, like, I remember that screening that we did with Austin, and that was really brutal, but there's a lot of little things you can tweak in a movie. Like, if we went back and re-edited it, I think we would get something different out of it, and we would edit it a bit differently, things like that. Jen had one more question.
Okay.
What is your favorite adaptation from book to film? I think I know what yours is. So I might actually have you do two, because there's the really easy go-to one that I think you're going to give me. But I want to
What am I going to give you?
I'm thinking you're going Apocalypse Now.
No.
Ooh. Okay. All right. This did just get a lot more interesting.
I mean, so what was the question again?
Yes. What is your favorite adaptation from book to film?
I mean, Apocalypse Now is the greatest movie ever. I don't really consider it an adaptation of anything, because I've read Heart of Darkness, and Heart of Darkness is absolutely nothing like Apocalypse Now. I consider it to be like inspired by Heart of Darkness, but I don't think it's an adaptation. The same way I consider Blade Runner to be inspired by Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, but I don't really consider it an adaptation.
Okay.
I would say my favorite adaptation that is this is the book, this is the movie, they're basically the same thing, is probably No Country for Old Men.
Oh, damn. Fuck.
Because...
That's good.
What?
Yes, that is good. That's really good. That's a really good
Because the book is excellent, and the movie is excellent, and the movie is almost exactly like the book, except they trim a little bit of fat, and the fat is thematically inconsistent as well. So it actually sharpens and strengthens the movie with the little bits here and there that they trim off.
The Coen brothers are actually really good at trimming fat off of their movies because a lot of their director's cuts are shorter than the theatrical cuts.
I know, that's what I've heard.
That's really good. Damn. God, I'm going to go for something really milquetoast and easy.
Okay.
Mine's probably just going to be Lord of the Rings.
I haven't read The Lord of the Rings, so I can't really comment.
It's like a lot of the movies that I like that are adapted from books don't actually translate well, because The Lord of the Rings, the movies, as adapted from the text, don't really sync up very well. They got rid of the Tom Bombadil section. They get rid of.
I was going to say there's a lot of Tom Bombadil stans who are pretty pissed about that.
Yeah, I mean, it is better that Tom Bombadil is out than in, because all of the questions that people have about the Eagles, like why can't they just have the Eagles fly in and drop the ring in? Oh, you mean against the freaking nation that has a bunch of mortars that could probably destroy the Eagles? Aside from that, okay, let's go into the logic of the book itself. If you thought the Eagles were a problem, you would have an even greater problem figuring out why Tom Bombadil doesn't just destroy the ring himself.
I know.
And
there's also the whole scoring of the Shire at the end of the book that a lot of people wish was in the movie, but it's so much better that it's not in the movie.
Right. Because
it's on a story level is a bad idea. I'm sorry, J.R.R. Tolkien is not infallible. There, I said it.
He's by no means. I will say in the book, though, it's kind of nice to see all of the things that have been building have this this moment where, you know, all of the characters who are now badasses get this moment of being badasses. But in the movie, it makes a lot of sense that the theme of the movie is that you can never really come back to, you know, what
you can't
you've
go
done.
home.
Exactly. And so in the movie, the ending that they chose, which I think is one of the best endings of a movie series and a movie itself of all time, I think it does a really good job. But I actually tend to like books that take the spirit of, movies that take the spirit of the book and don't do a direct beat for beat adaptation, because a lot of people aren't as lucky as Cormac McCarthy with the Coen brothers. Because goddamn, No Country for Old Men is like a perfect freaking, that's so good. So, yeah, that was awesome. That was a great pull. Okay, so the next question is, Aaliyah asks, how would I adapt Hamilton into a feature? So Disney Plus released the version that they were going to release in October of next year about a recording that they did over 3 days of Hamilton on stage. And you don't strike me as a musical theater type of guy.
Correct.
You don't like musicals either.
Correct.
Okay. You have no interest in Hamilton at all. Is that correct?
Correct.
Does it stem from the fact that it's topical, a rap musical, sung through, and like overly popular?
The only thing that turns me off of Hamilton is the fact that it is a musical and that it is a play. That's it.
Fair enough. It's really good. And it even has that thing where like you know, people are all pissed off because it's like, God, Lin-Manuel Miranda, he like wrote this amazing thing. He wrote all the lyrics, he wrote all the songs, and he's starring in it, man. Fuck this guy for thinking he's so great. And it's like, you know what? He's not like the best actor on stage. So, you know, it actually even kind of redeems it a little bit more because of that. I personally, as someone who does enjoy musical theater and musicals, although not really movie musicals, I feel like for some reason feature films is a really bad way to portray musicals. Like if you've ever seen Les Miserables.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
I feel like that's how it would end up being adapted.
Like that, the reason Aaliyah asked me this is because I've watched Hamilton the Disney Plus version twice now, and I really wish it wasn't on Disney Plus because I really want to hear when they're like, "Oh fuck," or like "motherfucker." You know, like I want those F-bombs back in the musical, the way that they were intended. All right, authorial intent. But like Hamilton on stage does a lot of things that most stage productions do that you might not find interesting, but I find fascinating. Things that have to do with like using lighting to take everyday scenery and change it into a completely different space. How they use recurring members of the ensemble to represent different things thematically, so that it can create sort of like more visual interest. Hamilton actually has some stuff that they do with slow motion that's really cool in a live space. Maybe I'm weird, but going the Tom Hooper route with a musical like Hamilton doesn't exactly strike me as a good idea, and I hope it never comes to pass. But if I did have to do Hamilton as a movie, I would probably rely more like Steven Spielberg probably should be the person who directs it because it's all about daddy issues.
Or Wes Anderson could direct it.
Yeah. Oh God.
All
not
his
enough
movies
white
are about
people.
daddy issues.
Not enough white people in it, aside from King George III, who's played by your boy Jonathan Groff, your boy from Mindhunter, and he's really good in the 3 songs he's in. He's fantastic. He steals the show. But I think, like, in my mind, if I were going to do an adaptation of Hamilton, I would probably rely a lot on techniques used in, like, avant-garde techniques and techniques used in music videos, because it's so rap heavy. And
Hamilton, the 90s music video.
Exactly.
Where everyone's like yelling at the camera from the inside of a cheese grater.
Super weird super weird wide angle lenses
fisheye
where
lenses,
like everyone looks super thin and stuff. But like, but there's so many different music styles in Hamilton that it would almost be like, in order to reflect those music styles, you would use music video stylings or like props or colors or things like that from that era to do it. I mean, it would almost be better done animated, because all of the music is so sharp and so fast that hand animation, you could do like a lot of really crazy things, like the Rhapsody in Blue segment in Fantasia 2000, or, you know, if Richard Williams were alive, you know, just take one song and have him animate it and just see what kind of crazy shit he could come up with. Like something like that would be really cool. But I don't think in general it would be a good idea to do a Hamilton feature, because the one that they have now is kind of like the best compromise of both worlds, because it's a little bit too over edited. There's a lot of spitting. I'm telling, dude, you should watch Jonathan Groff do the King George III songs, because they're really like, it's really funny, and feels almost out of place. But like, I don't think there's a way that you could do it in a popular way that would adapt well to it. Like, I think you would just end up having something that's half inspired. Like, a lot of people love West Side Story. I'm not a huge fan of West Side Story. It feels too stage musical for me, for being a movie.
You know who loves West Side Story?
Michael Bay.
Michael Bay.
Michael fucking Bay. You know who's doing an adaptation of West Side Story starring Ansel Elgort?
Michael Bay?
Steven fucking Spielberg.
Oh, Lord.
I know. He's really, like, I don't get it. I don't know what he's doing.
I always thought it was funny, like, half the cast of Twin Peaks is from the, like, 1960s or 70s West Side Story.
Oh, my God. What's her name? Is Rita Moreno in it?
No, but,
Damn!
like, the two guys who are, like, rivals in it are both in it.
Oh, my God. That's hilarious.
And I think they're both in the season 3 as well. Actually. Wow, they're like super old.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm surprised that they're alive. Have you seen West Side Story?
No. West Side Story is even worse. It's a musical play, so that's 2, and it's based on Shakespeare. That's 3. Three things I don't like.
Did you ever see Amadeus?
Yes, I did.
Did you like it?
Yeah, I liked it.
Yeah, there's a little bit of
it hurts that, you know, Mozart was supposed to be played by Mark Hamill and they got rid of him at like the last minute.
Mark Hamill was supposed to do it in the live action one?
Yep.
Well,
because he played Mozart. So Amadeus was a play.
Yeah.
Mark Hamill was the original actor for Mozart on the stage.
Yep.
So when they were casting the movie, it's like he's like, hey, I played him on the stage. I'm a big movie star. Let me be him in the movie. And then some idiot producer was like, I don't want Luke Skywalker in my dang movie. So they hired that other dude.
Tom Hulce, who was also the Hunchback of Notre Dame in the animated movie. And he has a freaking voice of an angel. Who's now a Broadway producer. Well, Mark Hamill was originally starring in Mozart opposite Ian McKellen as Salieri.
Oh, fuck. Ian McKellen would have been so great.
Right? Like, not that F. Murray Abraham isn't good, but
Ian McKellen.
like, I wish there was some sort of, like, videotaped production of Amadeus starring Mark Hamill and Ian McKellen on stage with Amy Irving as the wife. Like, that seriously to me sounds like if anyone has something like that, that's just gold right there. Because imagine Mark Hamill doing Mozart's Laugh. Come on.
That would be great. All right, I'm on 1 bar of battery, so let's go to the last question.
Last question comes from Ed, and he asks, will there be a post-reboot sequel franchise milking Hollywood era? So what do you think will happen next?
There will be, but the way the human mind works is that we develop patterns when we're still fairly young. Those patterns become set, and we play them out for the rest of our lives. And the only way that those patterns can be reset is like an Etch-a-Sketch. You have to shake the brain so hard that everything goes away, and you can start from scratch. So the movie industry has to go through some sort of severe shock where, like, studios start closing, like, people are losing money left and right. It has to be something like that court case in the 1940s that split up the studios and the theaters, or like United Artists going bankrupt. It has to be that kind of, like, traumatic in a business sense for a new business model to emerge.
Right.
How I think it would most likely play out is Disney being the only studio in the world now.
Not true. Lionsgate's pumping out fucking shit left and right, dude.
Well, but it's shit.
Some of it, yeah.
I mean, so a big studio like Disney or Warner Brothers, or maybe both, would have to invest a ton of money in big remakes, sequels, things like that, like a huge slate of them, and have them all just flop. This year maybe could have been that. If there were more big investments on the line. Like if Avengers Endgame was supposed to come out this year.
Oh my God, could you have imagined?
Yeah, like if it was supposed to come out this year and we had COVID, we had the lockdowns, there's a huge catastrophe and no one saw it, or no one saw it in a way that Disney could monetize, that would cause that sort of a change. That would start to get rid of the sequel remake mania.
I agree for the most part. The thing that they don't really talk about with like the indie film era, or with like the movie Brat Pack movie era, even to a degree the indie film era, it started off with a bunch of people who were doing projects that didn't have anything to do and didn't have any tie-ins with. They were all original properties, basically. Mm-hmm. But then almost every single one of them started shifting to things based off of books, and then those things based off of books did sequels, and then the indie films, they did well, they created some sort of either franchise thing or sequel thing, like the in the 90s the View Askew universe with Kevin Smith, or Quentin Tarantino's filmography, how it's all loosely connected, Robert Rodriguez's as well. But like,
wait, how does Shark Boy and Lava Girl tie into Desperado?
Oh God. Let me see. I haven't seen Shark Boy and Lava Girl, but if it has some sort of loose tie to Spy Kids, which has a character named Machete, played by Danny Trejo, who plays Machete in all of Robert Rodriguez's movies. I don't know. I think he's even Machete in Desperado, right? That's going to be my link. I don't know if it's true.
Danny Trejo plays the Spy Kids' uncle.
Yeah, the Spy Kids' uncle. Kids. Who's named Machete, I believe.
I don't remember that, but I'll have to take a look.
But fucking Shark Boy and Lava Girl. God damn it. Robert Rodriguez's career is just fucking it's baffling. But he proves the adage, or the adage, as long as you keep making movies, you will continue to get work.
Yep.
But I would have thought that COVID might do it, but the studios always seem to find a way to shift the dynamic back to remakes, sequels, franchises, reboots. So I don't think
I think the other thing is, like, if Tenet is somehow able to if Tenet makes some insane amount of money because there's not much competition right now, and then next year a lot of movies disappoint because there's too many released all at once, that may also change people's perceptions. I don't know.
Part of it is also, like, even if the people want new property, studios still feel it's safer to go with reboots and sequels and things that they know make money.
I mean, I think it's the other thing, like, I think it would require, like, Disney going bankrupt or something. Right. Well, the reason why is that it's not filmmakers, for the most part, making these decisions that, like, let's remake this, let's remake that. It's all, like, these business analytics, market research folks who are trying to engineer a popular movie based on market trends and data that they're looking at.
Right.
It's how Netflix makes a lot of their decisions. Like, they have a big analytics machine that spat out David Fincher, Kevin Spacey, and they're like, okay, what do we do with that? And then that's how House of Cards came to be.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, they just had an algorithm shout David Fincher, Kevin Spacey equals popular.
Yeah.
But I think that sort of thinking has to go away. Like, those people have to be removed from positions of importance for this to change.
Right. Well, and Disney is getting into this issue where they're making fewer movies every year and they're pumping more money into fewer movies. Mm-hmm. So it could cause a title shift, like what happened with Cleopatra and all of those movies, where, like, if Disney fails once, then the entire Hollywood infrastructure
goes catastrophic. Yeah.
But Disney's also a special case because almost every other big studio has some creators that they rely on to produce original content, or that they give almost complete creative control to. Mm-hmm. And Disney is the one studio that doesn't do that. And so I feel like
they don't
Disney
believe in creativity.
They don't, which is it. Yeah, no, they don't. They try to brand like they do, but they don't. They never have. Disney never has cared about He cares about creative problem solving in some ways, but if he cared about creativity, he wouldn't make everything based off of something. So I think that other studios, if Disney collapses, other studios will fare better, because I feel like on average, most studios have better relationships with directors than Disney does.
Yeah.
But I think it would cause the utter collapse of Disney to create a new era where we're not doing reboots, sequels, franchises, but that era would only last for maybe 10 years before we see everything moving back to it. And we almost had it with the internet, with, like, everyone's shift to YouTube and Netflix and things like that, where a lot of it was, like, creator owned. Like, YouTube kind of almost became the indie film market for a while, more like indie television. But
does that mean Ruibi is indie television?
Ruibi is like when they gave Ruibi. Word that does not exist because they use the Y as a consonant, but in the worst way possible, or a vowel.
Yeah, W is a vowel.
Just because you have two U's doesn't make it a W. That would be like when they pumped all that money into The English Patient and no one saw it, but it won Academy Awards. Or fuck, what was it? I feel like there was one movie that was like a super expensive indie movie. I guess it's Valerian, right? Ruby's like Valerian, where it's like, oh, you have a bunch of good creative talent behind the scenes, and they just kind of put out a piece of shit. Oh man. That's all the questions I have.
Okay.
So, do you have anything else you want to talk about aside from plugs?
No, let's just do the plugs.
Sounds good.
Our website is underthewheels.com. Yes, it is that simple. Underthewheels.com.
Finally.
Also, if you would like to, send us questions or comments, or be up to date on the latest podcast releases and articles and such, make sure to follow us on Facebook, and you can send anything you want to underthewheelspodcast@gmail.com. And the podcast, you're already listening to it, so you probably already know where it's available, but it's available on Apple and Stitcher, and
Hopefully branching out to more areas soon.
yeah, we're going to try and get it up on YouTube as well.
Yes, that too. I think that's it for plugs.
Yeah, music by Mike.
Yes, indeed. Music by Mike.
It's weird because there's two different music by Mikes that we've mentioned in this show. There's your friend Mike, aka, I don't know if it's right for me to shout him out, but
No.
who did the score for
Opus Overtones. Yeah.
And then there's podcast.
There's our friend Mike.
Our friend Mike, who did the music for the podcast.
Yeah. That is I didn't think about that. That is interesting. A lot of people with Mike who like to do music because they sing into a mic, I guess. I don't know. You've been named for the thing that you do. It's the old guard all over again.
It's Death Stranding all over again.
My name is Mike Singer. Oh.
Because I sing into a mic.
Because I sing into a mic. Oh, man. Hideo Kojima's next game, I tackled walking simulators. Now I'm tackling music simulators. Like,
I would love to see Hideo Kojima's Guitar Hero.
It's like the only guitar simulator where, like, if you string up, if you do the little flicky thing up, it's a different sound than when you do it down. Like, oh my god, the attention to detail, the pressure that you put on each button depends on, like, if you're hitting the chord correctly or not. Like, oh my god.
They spend like 25-minute cutscene explaining in great detail every component of like a standard Fender Stratocaster.
Who is also the name of your music instructor.
Oh my god.
Some like awkward, like, why is there like this random like scantily clad girl who's like explaining important plot detail? Why is there a plot in Guitar Hero? But there is now. Yep. Explained by scantily clad girl number 1.
Why is the script for X-Men written by Solid Snake? This and many more questions will be answered on future episodes of Under the Wheels.
That's actually, yeah. Ooh, nice tease. I like that. You know, but speaking of quick teases before we go, you know that the Paramount decree has just been overturned.
Wait,
or
what?
expired.
So
yeah.
Studios can own theaters again?
Correct.
Does this mean Disney's buying AMC and you have to like swear loyalty to Mickey Mouse whenever you buy a ticket?
What's interesting about Disney is that they were never privy to the Paramount decree to begin with. They just followed along with it because they have their own theater. They have the El Capitan in Los Angeles, which is also one of the only theaters that has like that insane like 185.5 surround sound thing. But it does mean that now Disney can buy all of the AMC's or Edwards Cinema in Georgia and only show Disney movies, and Paramount cannot do anything like that. It could mean the creation of block booking again. So
that's terrifying.
Yeah, it's when antitrusts go wrong or are ignored.
Or just expire, because apparently court rulings can expire. Which I'd never heard of.
I have never heard of that either, but yeah, I can believe it. Also, you know what? Last thing about the old guard and Charlize Theron in action movies. I feel like maybe she's doing it right, but Charlize Theron always has like really short or really like masculine hairstyles in all the action movies she's in. Where she has to do
literally like was thinking about that watching the old guard. I was like, you know, why does she have the Aeon Flux haircut in this movie?
Netflix, we derive all of our movies are super derivative.
I mean, at least it's different from Aeon Flux in that she doesn't die constantly.
Does she die constantly in Aeon Flux?
I don't know about the movie, but the whole thing with the show is that Aeon Flux dies in every episode.
I mean,
and sometimes she dies like in the first 10 minutes, so the rest of it is like something completely different.
The one thing about the old guard is that Charlize Theron does die over and over.
Oh, I guess that's true.
Oh, Netflix. You're going to just keep on being Netflix whether we want you to or not. Ugh. Well, you have any parting shots for the old guard?
It stinks. Don't waste your time.
Are we going to review the sequel when it comes out?
If there's another if we're still in quarantine when there's a sequel so that I have to watch the sequel, there's bigger problems.
Or if you donate money to us, maybe if you donate enough money, it can be an incentive goal, and then you'll have to watch it.
I'll watch The Old Guard 2 for money.
Yeah,
I'm not above that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just tag along with that too, because I'll probably end up watching The Old Guard for money anyway, or for no money anyway, because I already pay for Netflix. But I haven't watched Extraction yet, so maybe I wouldn't. We'll see. Anyway, that is Under the Wheels today. I'm Matthew.
I'm Gabe.
And you have just been Under the Wheels.
You said that twice.
I know, that was a really bad close. Should we redo the closing?
It's too late. It's already done. This is a live show.
We would be fucked.
It's already ruined. We're already fucked.
Someone would call in and be like, actually, you said it twice and it undermined the whole thing. Maybe I'll fix it in editing. I don't know. Yeah.
Finished.